Doktor dah test you can do.
Supaya keluar tempat juga buat dia sibuk nak
Cik Zainab belum masuk ya Kemal?
Lagi satu apa? Okay, doktor test. Saya
Assalamualaikum Cik Zainab.
Waalaikumsalam. Kejap ya. Oh.
It's okay. We still have time.
You are not Dr. T. Zikyong?
Yes, nanti they set my name. I am Dr. Yusmarwati. Dia belum setting lagi. I pakai akaun orang lain dulu ni.
Okay. Alright. So I must say good morning to the other speakers.
Now there's my name dah muncul dah.
Okay.
We are waiting for Dr. Margarita. She's not in yet. Sorry? Yeah. Oh ni, Cik Zainab, Dr. Razali nak hear pom. Start say hi. Boleh.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Bawal sikit tak nampak muka.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greeting and very good morning. Professor Dr. Nasruddin Muhammad, the Director of Higher Education Leadership Academic, AKEPT, yang berbahagia Professor Dr. Teknologis Dr. Wahid Razali, Vice Chancellor of UTHM as well as Chairman of Malaysia Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training, MyRevet, Associate Professor Dr. Razali Hassan, the Director of MyRevet, all keynote speakers, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, allow me to extend the warmest welcome to all participants to the TVET Leadership Development Program. Welcome everyone. And welcome back to those who have joined us in the previous webinar. Nice to see you again and thank you for your continuous support. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to thank all of you for your participating in this program. My name is TS Dr. Yusmawat Yusof and I am very honored and fortunate to be your moderator for this program. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed further, let us be blessed by Allah today. And for that, I would like to invite Ustaz Muhammad Amirul Hakim to recite the dua.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. إلى حضرة النبي الصفا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وصحبه الكرام الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق والناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. اللهم يا فعال لما يريد. We express our gratitude to you for allowing us to attend the launching ceremony of the webinar on the TVET Leadership Development Program on this morning. O Allah, we ask you for the safety of our religion and the welfare of our body. O Allah, Lord of the implementing authority, make the days that we have gone through starting with your mercy, continue with your blessing and ended with your forgiveness. And also make the days that we have gone through with guidance and with the victory of excellence. Ya Allah, Ya Muhaimin, Ya Aziz, Ya Jabbar, bless our efforts as a means to enlighten and convince ourselves that the personal safety of either outer and inner is a prerequisite for achieving happiness and excellence in various fields. O Allah, grant us faith and strength in the order to face the challenge of life during the transition period and in the face of life in this new millennium. Ya Allah, Ya Farijal Ham wa Ya Kashif al-Gham. Ya Allah, show us guidance and adjust our path and ways to achieve happiness and glory. Let us listen to people who like the good things. Let us avoid doing the bad and evil things. Oh Allah, bless ourselves and life in this meeting and gathering and prevent us from harm and unfortunate events. Rabbana alayka tawakkalna wa ilayka nabna wa ilaykal masir. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minkum.
Amin, 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 ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Ustaz, for the dua. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to have privilege to meet you for the second time in this webinar series. For your information, the first series of the program has discussed on digital transformation, challenges and opportunities in leadership skill acquisition, which was held on 26th of October 2021. Today, we are very fortunate to have you again with us for the second series that is entitled Sustainable Development Goals, Drive to Change. And it is a great honor to have three prominent speakers with us to talk about this topic. This webinar is organized by the Higher Education Leadership Academic, AKEPT, in collaboration with the Malaysia Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training, TVET. As a kickstart off for this webinar, with full of honor, I warmly welcome Professor Dr. Nasruddin Muhammad, the Director of AKEPT, to deliver his welcoming speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang berhormat Datuk Seri Dr. Nuraini Ahmad, Minister of Higher Education, Malaysia. Professor Datuk Technologist Dr. Wahid Razali, Vice Chancellor, Universiti Tun Hussein Malaysia, UTHM. Associate Professor Technologist Dr. Razali Hassan, Director, Malaysia Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training, TVET, Universiti Tun Hussein Malaysia. Honorable speakers, Professor Dr. Margarita Pavlova, Department of International Education, the Education University of Hong Kong. Professor Jin Mul, Lekha Malik Dharmasri Wikram Shinge, Director General, Colombo Plant Staff College. Technologist Zainab Ahmad, Director General, Department of Polytechnic and Community College Education, Ministry of Higher Education, Malaysia. Moderator, Technologist Dr. Yusmawati Yusof, Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Technical and Vocational Education, UTHM. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you and good morning. My fellow honorable speakers and participants, I wish to extend a very warm welcome to the second series of AKEPT Global Series, a collaborative effort between Higher Education Leadership Academy, AKEPT, and Universiti Tun Hussein Malaysia, UTHM. The program gathers TVET leaders across the world and their representatives to share their insights and thoughts on issues surrounding TVET higher education. And today, we are honored to have this distinguished panel of experts to share their experiences and wisdom as university leaders. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. The first series of the program had been successfully conducted in September 2021 with the theme Leadership Skills in the Digital Age, Challenges and Opportunities. Various topics had been discussed by three experts from TVET, namely the role of leadership and challenging rising in the digital age, digital skills in improving leadership style, and responsibilities of TVET leaders in the digital era, perspective of South Korea. Panelists had shared their insights of the importance of digital technology among TVET leaders and how the TVET leaders must embrace digital transformation, technology, leadership, and so forth. It is clear that every leader, especially in higher education institutions, particularly TVET leaders, must possess digital skills to remain relevant and updated. Moving forward to the next step to disseminate knowledge among TVET leaders, we are here today for another series of TVET Leaders Program with the theme Sustainable Development Goals, Drive to Change, emphasizing the understanding of 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals, focusing on SDG 4, and to develop strategies of SDG-based policy to institutional level in TVET field. AKEPT provides a platform for leaders from higher education institutions to gain knowledge and improve skills based on AKEPT leadership framework. Through this kind of platform, that the sharing of the leaders' insights will help the academic society to think of innovative innovations that will assist to enhance the higher education delivery to the community, particularly in this new norm. Ladies and gentlemen, technical and vocational education and training, that is TVET, is known as skill-oriented education to fulfill the increasing demand of a highly competent workforce with advanced skills. Up to these days, various initiatives are taken by the TVET leaders towards TVET educational attainment so that it can be used as a guide in performing a paradigm shift towards improving the perception of TVET in Malaysia among the Zoomers, that is Gen Z, as one of the bold options in continuing their studies to the next level. To assert TVET would spur human capital development for the country, as the rationale behind this is straightforward, that is, economic growth will depend on a highly skilled workforce that can fulfill industry needs. TVET leaders through MyRevet helps to develop the skills of specialized and professional educators so that quality instruction and preparation are delivered, resulting in creative, technical, sound and future-ready educators. TVET is recognized as one of the 4 priorities of the UNESCO's Education for All, that is the EFA strategy, and it is also a priority under UNESCO's Education for Sustainable Development, ESD strategy. Therefore, TVET leaders must step up and meet the growing and changing demands of the industry. Hence, this is part of the sharing platform for all TVET leaders across the globe to enhance their knowledge and skill. My fellow audience, topics that will be discussed today are 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 4, developing strategies of SDG-based policy to institutional level, and SDG 4 Quality Education, Malaysia, TVET reform. The forum emphasizes the importance of profoundly prepared, competent TVET leaders in ensuring the deliverability of quality education aligned with the 4th goal in the UN SDGs through a wide perspective. The detailed discussion on the agenda will equip TVET leaders to comprehend SDGs topic, specifically in TVET field, to assist leaders in developing a sustainable strategy in leading TVET institutions. As the organizer of the webinar, we are proud to steer the knowledge sharing session today by the experts on their insights and strategies as leaders in TVET field. We hope that this webinar will be an informative platform on how leaders, educators, or instructors from universities and TVET institutions can prepare and enhance their leadership skills to demonstrate the required qualities to drive changes. It is indeed important to transform the current education system to one that is more learner-centered, flexible, inclusive, and future-ready, along with the unexpected rapid evolutions of learning digitalization in modern times. With the help of great quality TVET leaders and educators, the global agenda, especially in the TVET education world, can definitely be achieved. AKEPT, under the Center for Leadership Sustainability, is looking forward to organizing more programs to disseminate leadership knowledge locally and globally. It is hoped that this will be a fruitful webinar for all, and I look forward to witnessing the second series of TVET Leadership Development Program becoming an agenda for the betterment of TVET education in the future. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dato', for the welcoming speech. Ladies and gentlemen, achieving inclusive and quality education for all reaffirms the belief that education is one of the most powerful and proven vehicles for sustainable development. One of the most pressing issues confronting today's educators is the need for an ability to adapt in a more dynamic and difficult environment. Educational leaders must be creative and innovative in order to quickly address all problems. They must also come up with fresh ideas or improvements for the institution's advantage. And today, we are indeed very delighted and privileged to have experts from many disciplines and organizations that are going to share the best practice of quality education through Sustainability Development Goal, which is the SDG 4. Just a little housekeeping and friendly notes to all the participants before we get started. This webinar is divided into 3 sessions. In the end of all presentation, we will have a short Q&A session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the comment box. On behalf of you, I will try to raise the question to the respective speakers at the end of the webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not delay any longer. We will turn the time over to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Margarita Pavlova. Hi, Dr. Margarita.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, how are you doing?
Very well. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Margarita will deliver her keynote entitled 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 4. A brief introduction about Dr. Margarita. She is from the Department of International Education, the Education University of Hong Kong. Currently, she is the Director of the Univoc Center Hong Kong, UNESCO Univoc Network, Edu Hong Kong since 2014 till present. She is also an associate professor at Department International Education in the Education University of Hong Kong. Previously, she has served as a director of UNESCO Univoc Center at Griffith University. She is the senior lecturer in School of Education and Professional Studies at Griffith University. She also served as a deputy director of Griffith Institute for Educational Research. What is interesting about Dr. Margarita, she is a holder of 2 PhDs. The first one is PhD in Theory and History of Education, obtained from the Academy of Pedagogical Science of the USSR, Moscow, Russia. And the second is PhD in Comparative Education from the La Trobe University, Melbourne, Australia. She has engaged in many projects that involve international and other competitive grants. Among them are Qatar National Research Fund, Central Research, the Edu Hong Kong, the World Bank Project, Research Grant Commission, and APEC Research Project. Achievement in her career is the case about the inclusion of green skills into policy. TVET teaching and learning in the Asia-Pacific region, which assessed at the highest level in the recent research assessment exercise conducted in Hong Kong. The project has been selected among a very few cases by University Grants Committee Hong Kong for publicity. She has received 2 awards for research engagement and impact and Dean's Research Awards. She also successfully finalized the edited book that features the result of research, the inclusion of green competencies in the recognition of prior learning, a comparative study of 7 countries in the Asia and Pacific region, where Malaysia was one of the participating countries. It is in print with the Springer now, and I'm looking forward to read that book. Well, with that, please welcome Dr. Margarita. The screen is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much and good morning, everyone. It is always a great pleasure for me to present in Malaysia because I have so many friends here, so many esteemed colleagues. So thank you very much again for inviting me. So can I just check, is it okay? Can you see my screen? So shall I proceed? Yes, okay. So today's topic, as it was announced, is about Sustainable Development Goal 4. And I would like to cover a number of points. So you can see here some background notes, some UNESCO strategies and skills for sustainable development partnership, and some ways forward. In terms of background, we all know that the agenda that relates to sustainable development started in 1980s, and then it went through a number of milestones. So now we have Agenda for Sustainable Development 2030, with 17 development goals. And we can present them in a different way, but I think this one is a good visual image where we can see that there is goals that related to the nature or environment, the goals that related to society and economy. And of course, for all these goals, partnership is going as a united theme because we can only achieve them if we're doing things together. And Sustainable Development Goal 4 is specifically related to education, but there are, of course, mentioned through a number of other goals, and you can see here the examples, goal number, for example, 3, 5, 8, 12. And when we're talking about TVET, actually TVET is required to support all sustainable development goals so they could be achieved. And our current Sustainable Development Goal number 4 was sort of accepted and launched through the Incheon Declaration, when it was turning education towards inclusive, equitable, quality education and lifelong learning for all. And it was based on the Education for All agenda and also Millennium Development Goals project supported by United Nations. And when we are looking at Sustainable Development Goal 4, we have 7 targets and also 3 means of implementations. And I'm sure that we all know this very well. This is just to remind us. And if we look at the targets, we can see that some of them are directly related to the skills for work, directly related to vocational education. And that was a very big achievement when TVET was explicitly included and highlighted into the educational agenda. Here you can see the types of targets and indicators under each sustainable development goal that relates to vocational education. And you can see that basically it is more or less quantitative indicators, yes? The proportion of youth and adults with information and communication technology skills, or percentage of youth and adults who have achieved at least a minimum level of proficiency, or gross enrollment ratio for tertiary education by sex, or existence of funding mechanisms. So all these things that is sort of easy to measure. And from time to time, we received these reports, how we are doing in terms of sustainable development goals implementations. And here you can see overall, the green color is on target, yes, or sustainable development goal achieved, yes, so on target. And then the yellow one, challenges remain, orange, significant challenges remain. So if you looked at Malaysia, so there's still some challenges in terms of implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 4. And on the right side, you can see 3 indicators for all countries. And again, this is just the enrollment, yes, and literacy. This is the quantitative indicators. And if we're looking at trends, again, the same codes, again, in Malaysia, the challenges remain. So your seminar today or forum today is really a timely event that contributes towards improving the situation for your country. So this is some specific targets that relates to skills, competencies, and knowledge that relates to technical and vocational education. And the first one relates to equal access for women and men for affordable quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, then relevant skills for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurship, and then equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for different types of groups. And if we look at statistics, today I picked up the secondary education level. You can see the enrollment rate for Asia Pacific, for example. So it was a boost and then it was a decline, and then now it's catching up. In Malaysia, this is statistics for Malaysia. And when I looked at Malaysia, I realized that, for example, we're talking about secondary TVET, still in your country, this 11th Malaysian plan hasn't been fulfilled yet. Yes, so the enrollment rate or lower than expected, yes, and the number of graduates lower than expected. So even in terms of these number targets, there are issues. And but today I want to focus on this qualitative type of targets or indicators that we really need to focus, because Malaysia now is well advanced many countries in terms of putting forward this sustainable development greening agenda. And so I just want today to highlight what are the other areas or targets might be. And this is again in terms of vocational education, what we need to do and achieve. So UNESCO strategies and plans. UNESCO strategy, currently we're finishing the strategy 2016-2021. And as you know, there are three main priority areas there. The first one relates to youth employment and entrepreneurship. The second one, promoting equity and gender equality, and then facilitating the transition to green economies and sustainable societies. And these priority areas have been backed up by data. And my focus today, for example, is on them. One that relates to greening, climate change, and you can see that new jobs have been generated by this movement. So there is a need for vocational education to be adjusting to these developments. And currently, the new UNESCO strategy 2022-2029 is under discussion. And they adjusted their priority areas because there are new challenges now. It was a long economic due to COVID, and digital became more important. And as you mentioned, your first forum was on digital literacies. But sustainable development is still there because it is a really important area to be addressed through technical and vocational education. And here you can see the areas of climate change, biodiversity, and green transition. And currently we're under the medium-term strategy 21-23. And if we look at the descriptor, you can see that the whole intention of developing our TVET is to help youth and adults to develop skills they need for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship, and helping through these developments, transitions towards sustainable societies and greener economies. And also the request for develop innovative strategies to tackle current challenges and prepare for the evolving future of work. And sustainable development is sort of current agenda that started a long time ago. And you can see some quotes that relates to the Rio Declaration that really pushed this agenda forward. And then we also had Education for Sustainable Development that finished in 2014 that highlights that it is, both of them highlights that it is important to put an emphasis on values, behavior, lifestyle, ethical decision-making, attitudes. So it is not only the numbers. Yes, the government, of course, focus on the numbers first, and then this is the content that we need to include into what we are doing. And in 2015, it was the Paris statement that relates to inclusive green growth. And you can see that the number of approaches suggested by this declaration relates to multi-sectoral, multi-level approaches towards some training and empowering individuals, communities, and societies. And then the need to put sustainability at the heart of economic policies and practices. And then the need to change attitudes, mindsets, and behaviors to support this economic growth paradigm. And then making learning and knowledge available for all members of society. And then to have a truly transformational learning. And also partnership and going across different disciplines to address the issues and problems, and then cooperation with business enterprises, SMEs, and multinationals. So UNESCO strategy for 2022-2029 have these three pillars. And in the middle, you can see economy and skills that are required for this economy that would support sustainable development of the country. So what skills do we need for sustainable development? And if we look at this graph, you can see that non-routine analytical skills and non-routine interpersonal skills are the trend in US. Yes, this data is for US. And all these routine skills are in decline. So that means creativity, innovation, decision making. This is what is required. And this slide I want to share with you. Coursera is a big platform that provides online training. Yes, and they had the statistics here for 2019 and 2020. And you can see that in 2019, the focus was on the technical skills. But in 2020, it jumped to communication skills, working with people, self-management skills, and a little bit of problem solving. And the last column is the World Economic Forum. And this is their prediction, what skills would be required in 2025. And you can see that problem solving skills is a big chunk of this. And then, of course, self-management, working with others, and technological skills as well. But you can see the tendency, yes, the move away from just technical skills towards these problem-solving skills or self-management skills. Sometimes we call them soft skills. And I think probably this is the most important slide in my presentation. Yes, when we're talking about the targets for sustainable development and indicators, what we include is the one that is easy to manage. They are quantitative and they assess the numbers of enrollment, the percentage of graduates, etc., etc. And when we are talking about what we should do, we need to focus actually on the skills that are required. And the skills are problem solving, values, attitudes, behavior. So they're much harder to measure. And here on this slide, you can see the things when we're talking about greening and greening curriculum. There are the things that are easier to measure. Yes, if we, for example, include new green course, if we include green themes in curricula, or if we establish new greening occupations and develop training standards, we're greening the teacher standards, we have green research initiatives, we established green major and minor in our training programs, we organize special green events. And in Malaysia, a lot of these happening already. So I'm really, really pleased when I'm looking at the developments that your country have. But it is much harder to measure personal responsibility, values, ethics, mindset, empathy, critical thinking, emotional skills, teamwork. How can we ensure that all these measures that is easy to measure actually end up in these qualities that we required? And I would like to share with you one publication that has been published by UNESCO, and it discusses the futures of education that highlights this humanistic approach. And it is built upon reports, learning to be, yes, what education should be today and tomorrow, then learning the treasure within, and then rethinking education towards global common good. And now what they're trying to do is to reframe the purpose of education in the changing world beyond 2050. And here they called it social contract for education. So what were the purposes? Why education were established? By the end of the 19th century, it was like this national systems of education were established. So what were the reasons and what have been done? And you can see here the number of principles that is very well known for us. And majority of educational systems are performing based on these principles now. Yes, so we have teachers, we have the structure, classes, classrooms, we have curriculum that is organized in subjects, we have the practice where the single teacher usually orchestrates learning within the particular discipline. And we have, across the world, we have very different procedures and approaches despite of the differences in the context. And usually we group students in a similar age and in the specialized institutions. Usually we distance them from the families and communities. And so this is the way how our education is functioning now. But what they're proposing to do is to have this new social contract for education. And so it should be a shared commitment between different players, not just the government and the parent or the students. Yes, so community, industry, all should be involved, different citizens should be involved. And then we need to develop students as autonomous and ethical thinkers and doers. Yes, so they not only need to think, but also need to do things. They also need to collaborate with others, develop their agency, responsibility, empathy, critical and creative thinking, alongside a full range of social and emotional skills. And to renew this education, they suggest to focus on pedagogy, curricula, teaching, and then schools that need to be site that protect students, enable them to develop and look after their well-being. And also we need to provide these educational opportunities for all. So this document and all projects that I have been doing in the region in terms of greening TVET highlight the importance of pedagogy, curricula, and teaching. So not only the numbers who are enrolled, not only the courses that we are included, but we need to make sure that we achieve effectiveness, we achieve the results. And here, this is again the summary of these futures for education. So you can see the descriptors of what pedagogy is required is participatory, collaborative, problem posing. So we're not only solving problems, but we also pose or formulate problems. Yes, so we need to engage cognitively and emotionally our students. It should be project and problem-based learning. In terms of curriculum, it should be built on the competencies. Mainly it is learner-centered, but also it could be teacher-centered when it is required or subject-centered when it is required. And then we need to address this ecological crisis, or today we call it greening. And in terms of teaching, yes, so the teachers should have the opportunities for professional development. They should be lifelong learners. And then you can see the descriptors that relates to schools and learning spaces. So today I want to discuss how these things that are required for futures of education can be addressed or have been addressed through greening of our curriculum. And here there are three definitions that I will use when I'm presenting. So the first one, what do we mean by green economy? Yes, that is significantly reduced environmental risks and environmental depletion, but also it is socially inclusive. Yes, greening of human capital, I think it's extremely important concept. Yes, so when we are training capital with different skills, but also in addition to greening infrastructure and greening our industry. And in Malaysia, you have a good policy in terms of that. Yes, you have the policy that relates to green technologies and then greening of human capital. And then green skills, that, and what do we mean by them? So the importance of green human capital, I just put several quotes here to reinforce the message that we really need people who are able to work within these green economies and who are able to address the challenges of new occupations that relates to greening. And one of the studies conducted by ILO, they are trying to understand what does it mean, greening economy, in relation to skills requirements. And they are talking about the shifts in the way each job is performed, and then greening of existing jobs and emergence of new skills and occupations that relates to greening. And when we analyze the government's role in these processes, we identified several very important features. So the first one is specific policies and programs, and you can see Malaysia and Philippines are leading the game in our region. And then establishing implementation organizations, which is really important to have some center or some organizations that is looking after these greening processes and skills that are required. And so in India, we have a very good example of skills councils for green jobs. And in Philippines, we have Green Technology Center. And then establishing new green jobs or occupations. And here again, you can see examples from different countries. And for different countries, green jobs mean different things. Yes, for Bangladesh, for example, it can be technicians or mechanical engineering that relates to solar energy. In China, it can be engineers that relates to solar, wind, and biomass, and etc. In different countries, different things. And then greening existing jobs or occupations. So in Malaysia, you've done that. They did it in Australia and Nepal also. So when we're talking about the types of green skills, this is the typology that we have been using for some time now. And you can see that at the base, we have positive attitude towards sustainability and green mindset. This is a real foundation that everyone should develop, and we should address through our teaching and learning processes. Then the next level is generic green skills. The next one is topping up, that relates to existing occupations, and then specific green skills. And I will talk about them in some detail later. So specific green skills is the smallest number of skills that we need to develop, but we really need to put an effort in that. And specific green skills, usually we use the established processes to introduce new occupations into our systems, and usually it is done through the formal TVET programs. And so we identify what competencies are required, and then we develop the programs based on that. And this is, for example, from Hong Kong. Yes, the government decided that that would be environmental industries. These type of occupations were required. And then the programs were designed to address these needs. And the same in Malaysia, you did the same thing. In the Philippines, they also analyzed the way they try to understand how to, what occupations to introduce. Yes, they analyzed the government policies in terms of greening economy and realized that some occupational training is lacking. And so after that, they start establishing these training programs and deliver it through the Green Technology Center. And example from India, they have a number of missions that relates to greening. And here example that relates to renewable energy. They have very ambitious plans that relates to that. And so they established this skill council for green jobs. And its role is to develop training packages based on the occupational standards and then deliver training. And also they're working with communities, they're looking at them job opportunities in different parts, and then they start delivering this training. And this is the examples of what they developed and how it is related to the national qualification framework levels. And here, in addition to solo, of course, they developed different type of training packages, including clean cooking, wind energy, biomass energy. When we're talking about topping up skills, this can be often delivered through on-work training, because often it is associated with introduction of new green technologies in their workplace. But of course, then gradually we introduce these elements into our training programs, and it can be as a result of TVET staff initiatives, if you have a good relationship with the industry and you can see the need to do that, or it can be directly requested by the industry, or it can be done through the introducing green elements into occupational standards. And this is the example from Australia. They did it in 2009, so they looked through all training packages and include these green elements into them. And in the Philippines, they did the same. They just have slightly different names for the training packages, and they introduce this greening into the competency-based curricula based on that. And when we're talking about generic green skills, these are the skills that everyone should acquire, and they help to facilitate the workforce to understand the green growth issues, increase their environmental awareness and ability to act. And it can be done through initial TVET training and through professional development. It can be done through specific modules or teaching and learning activities or work-based training. And when we conceptualized generic green skills, we identified 4 areas. And you can see that 3 of them are closely related to the skills or qualities that are stated now in the futures of education. Yes, that highlight the new social contract for education. And when I developed them, it was based on the soft skills suggested by OECD. And then, but they're similar, but within the context of greening. Yes, for example, environmental awareness and willingness to learn about these, or interpersonal skills that relates again to greening or opportunities of low carbon technologies, or marketing skills to promote greener products and services, and technological competencies that are related to the greening processes across all industries that relates to waste, energy and water and materials. And here, just to highlight that they're closely related to the 21st century skills. And here you can see one of the classification we used for our project in Qatar, actually. And you see, I highlighted the one that are directly related to generic green skills, but as you also saw on the previous slides, it is also directed to the new social contract for education. And here just the example how I compared these 21st century skills and generic green skills, and this is a really close match. So now the most important thing is curriculum and pedagogy. Yes, because it is more or less easy to introduce a module into our teaching, but how to deliver it and how to achieve the results. And this is the example of the module that we had in our vocational training council. This is the biggest TVET provider in Hong Kong. And you can see it is 24 hours and the areas that have been addressed. And then we did the study where Malaysia again was involved, and we are focusing, and that was the universities, and we're focusing on how greening is included in TVET teacher education. So this study helped us to identify generic green skills, identify the concepts that has been addressed or missed from teaching, and also help us to focus on development resources that could help to develop these generic green skills. And this is the reality that when we observed classes of TVET classes in Hong Kong, we realized that teaching content should be improved, could be improved. Pedagogy should be changed because students were not engaged when teachers standing in front of the class delivering some talks about greening. And assessment should be changed because we can't measure values, attitudes, and problem-solving skills when we're using tests. Yes. So we developed this problem-oriented and project-based learning where we're addressing these issues, and we published on this in the TVET at Asia journal, so you can read about that. And what was really important is to bring the world into the classroom and create real-world opportunities for the students to understand what's going on in the industry, and also to show them how these concepts are related to their everyday life. And as a result,
Dr. Margarita, just to alarm you, you have another 5 minutes.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so we developed, based on our research, and also we trialed this in TVET setting in Hong Kong. We developed these resources and website where we start putting these resources. And here are the concepts that we identified that really we need to address through our teaching and learning, so the students have a clear understanding of what does it mean greening of economies, what do we need to do, and have a also ability to solve problems within the context of greening and sustainable development. And also we put in the case studies from the industries, so the students can see how these concepts have been adopted in different settings. And because we use student-centered pedagogy, so we have the resources that the students can read, and then we have working sheets for the students so they can follow the instructions in the class, and then the teacher performed as a facilitator, and also we have industry case studies, as I mentioned. And we trialed training based on that resources for different type of categories. And this one we did is actually for CPSC, for 12 TVET leaders. The picture at the bottom, you see we did it for Indonesian PhD students who are also TVET leaders in that country, and we did it online. And we have a very good response from that. And we also did it in the classrooms in Hong Kong, and also you can see that teachers said that they observed the real change in students' engagement and behavior, that students became interested, etc., etc. So we also understand that we need to develop competencies for teachers, and these are the suggested ideas, and we use them to develop the teacher competencies that includes greening and sustainable development, and we focused on these 3 areas. And I know that in Malaysia you develop teacher competencies for greening that is based slightly on a different approach. Yeah. Partnerships. So here I bring a lot of examples that relates to partnership, but I will skip them, and my slides will be available for you so you can look at this. But here I just want to highlight, if you remember the first image, when we have environment, social, and then economic goals, and then partnership is going through, I just want to highlight that it is important to have partnership at intergovernmental level, at the national level, at the industry level, and then institutional level. And the industry level, I think, is the most unusual and important slide among these partnership, because here we are trying to identify the areas for partnership between TVET and industry. And usually we just send students for practicum, or maybe invite representatives from the industry to contribute to our curriculum development and standards. But here we focused on greening, and we try to understand how we can collaborate. And you can see that here we have what's happening in the industry today and what they want for tomorrow. And then based on their wish list, we were able to find out the points where they can collaborate. And so this is the examples, I just leave them for you, and then how to move forward. I think that there are a number of key dimensions for greening TVET that we identified for our studies. And you can see that they relate to awareness, and this is the global awareness across all levels of society. And then curriculum, and what is important to have is a flexibility of curriculum frameworks, so the greening elements can be added based on observations and requests from the industry. Then government support. Then of course it is important to green industry, so we have a demand and involvement of different stakeholders. And this is my last slide, so you can see these possible actions that relates to partnership, national level, and then standards, industry, and TVET institutions. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Margarita. It's such an informative presentation on greening. I guess the audience will enjoy it as well. And if I can see previously, you have done study in the inclusion of green competencies in the recognition of prior learning, a comparative study of 8 countries in the Asia and Pacific region. Perhaps would you be able to expound on the most important finding of the comparison study?
Okay. Okay, actually, we developed the recommendations at 3 levels: the level of the government, and then level of the standards, and level of the institutions or industry. And what we realized that it is really important to have a holistic approach, because of course we can start from one element, but we really need to address issues at different levels so we can achieve change. For example, in terms of government, yes, government to ensure that the country or territory has a definition of the concept of green skills that are required for different occupations, and that is related to green growth strategies and green skills, yes, because we realize that in some countries, people don't know what do we mean by green skills, yes. Then the government established the legislation that relates to greening of skills to support greening plans or the greening of the economic plans. Yes, and then, for example, develop policies on taxations and financial incentives that are friendly towards the use of green products and technologies. So this is the whole list of things that we are suggesting based on the table that I included in my presentation, so that the government needs towards looking of greening industries and greening TVET institutions and greening legislations. And in terms of curriculum, no, in terms of the standards, I think that you did it already. So all standards, training standards that they used, we should include greening in them. And then in terms of recognition of prior learning, that adds additional dimension to that, because again, in many countries that were involved, industry were not particularly interested in these processes, and they don't require people who are coming towards the industry to go through the formalization of the skills that they developed through their previous work. And so it's important to mainstream these processes of recognition and then include the greening elements into that. And then at the micro level, we also have recommendations that relates to enabling factors that supports development and recognition of green skills through the relevant information, advocacy, guidelines, counseling, training, financial support, inclusion of NGOs into these processes. So basically, the main outcome of this project is that we developed a framework that now governments can use to see as a checklist, to see have they been doing these things. And considering that they want to include greening through different means, including the mechanism of recognition of prior learning, they might use this framework to do that.
Well, interesting. So we need to green everything, yeah? Well, with that, thank you again, Dr. Margarita. And just a gentle reminder, if the participant have any question, you can start right down in the comment box, and I will try to read it after all the speakers finish their presentation. Well, now we will be moving on further for the second session. And for this session, with all due respect, I would like to invite Prof. GLD Wikramasinghe, or dearly addressed as Prof. Wik. Hi, Prof.
Hello. Good morning,
everyone. Doing well?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yes, right. Okay. Prof. Wik is going to share on the topic that entitled Developing Strategies of SDG-based policy to institutional level. Before I hand over the floor to Prof. Wik, let me brief on Prof. Wik's background. Currently, he is the Director General of Colombo Plant Staff College, CPSC. He is the first Sri Lankan and the 12th Director General of CPSC appointed by the Governing Board with effect from 1st September 2021. He is also the President of the Asia Pacific Accreditation and Certification Commission, the Accreditation and Certification arm of CPSC for TVET institution. He graduated with a degree in textile engineering from the University of Moratuwa in 1993 and obtained his PhD from the University of Manchester, UK in 2003. He is a chartered engineer and a corporate member of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka and the Engineering Council Sri Lanka. Prior to joining CPSC, Prof. Wig was a professor of textile engineering at the University of Moratuwa. He is the former chairman of the Center for Open and Distance Learning at the same university. He was also a former vice chancellor of the University of Vocational Technology and former head of the Department of Textile and Clothing Technology. He served as the chairman of Atelier International School and independent non-executive director Orit Apparel Sri Lanka Ltd and the Sri Lanka Institute of Textile and Apparel. He also served as the director for technical and quality assurance of the Brandix Textile Ltd. He served as the chairman and members of various public sector strategic and technical committees. Prof. Wig has published over 60 research publications, of which over 30 are internationally referred journal publications. He was also honored with 18 national and international awards, including Emerald Literary Award 2018, honored with President's Award for Scientific Publication and NRC Merit Award for Scientific Publication. The World Education Congress honored him with the Award of Outstanding Contribution to Education in Sri Lanka Education Leadership Awards 2018. What a great achievement. Now, Prof. Wig, without delay any longer, the floor is yours. Please welcome.
Okay, good morning. Can I share my presentation? Yeah. 1 minute. Yeah, can you see my presentation?
Prof. Wig, we already shared the screen.
Yeah, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Vice Chancellor, Director Generals of the TVET, staff members of all the institutions, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank UTHM and TVET for inviting me to give a presentation on the Sustainable Development Goals, Drive to Change, and my focus is developing strategies of SDG-based policy to institutional level. So then when I got this title, so I thought this is a staff development program. So what do we do now? As an example, so we have the time limits also, 30 minutes. So what do? I try my best to give you a framework on how this SDG-based policy adapt into the institutional level strategies. Because I found that, we have as an example, even this audience, maybe some from, academic background, technical background, engineering background, some may be management. So one of the problem here in this, not only the SDG, even we are talking about IR 4.0, green technology. So it's, I think, so many information, coming, and even the experts now confused what exactly we do with our institution. One problem is because of the UN is giving, UNOC is giving, and even the country has a framework. So they, every institution try to incorporate all into their institution. That is not the strategy, right? Because each and every institution, you have their own strengths and weaknesses. So when you incorporate, you have to see what are your main business, right? Yes, you have to. You can incorporate, most of these SDG, the goals into your curriculum, etc. But then, before you go into curriculum and your program, you have to see the big picture, right? So in this 30 minutes, I'll try my best to take you through that one, because there are so many information. At the end, I'll give you the link even. You have more and enough information and materials for you to adapt this one to your institution if you go through a formal process. And if you have a plan, right? Or if you have a strategy for your institution, not the government, not the regional level, not the UN level, etc., or the UNOC, etc. Right? For that one, if you have done strategic management module, so I think you can understand what I'm talking about. But one of the problem is most of the technical, the people do not have this management capability, right? So that gap is there. So the number one, as I mentioned you earlier, you have to understand your capabilities, right? What are your strengths? Right? What are your resources available in your institution? What are your focus? What are the programs you are offering? How you link into SDG? 17 goals, it's too much, right? So sometimes we are talking about SDG 4. No, education, you are responsible for all, but it doesn't mean that you have to incorporate all these 17 into your institution. So that is the government or the global level target. But individuals, if we can actually achieve or explore at least 4, so then we will be able to achieve this all goal. So that is the focus in this, leadership development program, right? As a leader, because in education, right, in academics, the leaders are also academics, right? Teachers become, as an example, teachers, they do program, the coordination, you are leader there. Even the head of departments, even the deans, vice chancellors, directors, academics. Right? So you have a leadership role to play. Right? So they are, other than teaching, your individual curriculum, yes, you have to concentrate on your curriculum development and everything into that one, but your institution must have a focus and the holistic approach, right? So then the implementation, this is the important part. Why? Because SDG now, the strategies, the global and the regional and the government or even the divisional level, educational strategies there, health strategies there, right? But the thing is now, what do we do actually? University or TVET or educational institution, we are implementing agencies, right? We are implementing agencies. So we have to understand the difference between these. Now, as an example, you have your own strategy, your own strategic plan for 2025 or maybe 2530. Now you are developing. So what you have to do, because you can't actually have a separate SDG strategy. The important part is you have to incorporate into your strategic plan. That is your focus. You have to understand that. The most important, as I mentioned earlier, you are implementing agency. Right? Most of the strategies, policies, action plan, everything is there. Right? The lacking part is the implementation, because you can have a very nice plan, but if you can't implement that one in your institution, the government level, your sector level, that's a failure. Right? So therefore, and the other one is evaluation and control, very important. You have to have, when you develop that one, you have to have the evaluation and control criteria. I think Professor Margarita clearly gone through this one. It's very easy for me because I don't have to even talk about SDG now, because she has done a comprehensive, very descriptive analysis on the SDG and how it incorporate into this sector. So my one is now the strategic part, right? So understand the difference, this one now. How you incorporate this one to your institutional level. Right, the major problems. Now, even though now in this program, staff development program, we are talking about SDG, right? But maybe your first one with regard to digital learning. So there are 4 IR coming now. There are so many, the seminars, conferences, etc. How to adopt into 4 IR and how to adopt to greening, right? Greening, TVET and all there. So now perhaps you are confused because you can't have, separate 4 IR strategies, separate greening strategies, separate sustainable development goal to achieve that one. So the thing is now you have to actually, so these all your external environment, right? So these changes happening outside, right? So if it happen outside, what is your, the opportunity? What are your plans now? So you have to consider this whether it's an opportunity or a threat. Why? Now is it SDGs opportunity for you or a 4 IR, Industry 4.0 changes? It depends. It depends. Why? Because if you have capability to explore these, as an example, 4IR or SDG goals, so these are opportunities for you. You have resources, you have plan, right? You have resources, you can implement that one, right? So then you have opportunity because you will be able to excel in those areas, right? I'm not talking about all SDG, 17 SDGs. As an example, if you are a automotive institute dedicated for that one, so you have to see what are the areas where you can incorporate into your institution. Right? Some institutions, as an example, so therefore you can't actually generalize this one. I'm giving you the framework. Now you have so many materials there available in the website and everywhere. So you have to see how I am going to, as a leader, as a teacher, as a coordinator, how we do it, not I do it actually, because this is not individual, the approach. You can't concentrate on any of these individually. It should be synchronized, synergy must be there, and then start from the top. You have to align these. As an example, you maybe change your curriculum, but if it is not aligned to your institutional or your program objectives and scopes, you are not able to implement it, right? So therefore, the opportunity part is there, but why threat? The same factor, because SDGs, there are so many factors. You have to go into those. What are the factors that impact you, right? Particular sector, right? Maybe electrical electronics industry, maybe hotel management industry, maybe design and development part. Because Malaysia, I have seen, is very nice because we are doing now this APEC review. So now we have done 4 during I have been here only 2 months. We have already reviewed 4 and 1 more there. And also 4 institutions now reviewing in Pakistan. The Malaysian model I have seen very interesting. It's unique because they are very much concentrate on industry specific programs. So therefore, right, I have seen 1 design, 1 for engineering part, 1 for gas and oil exploration. Yes. So you have to now narrow it down to your target, how it impacts your industry, right? So then if you are not faced for that one, as an example, if you don't have resources, no funding, right, no investment, it becomes threats. Why? Because the factors will be grabbed by your competitors and they will develop and they will be excel in those areas. Maybe now you are in the top #1 institution in this Malaysia or Asia or even the globe, your ranking, you will be go down because you are not prepared to implement those strategies and the opportunities actually. Because these opportunities are not there forever. You have a very narrow window there for you to play with that one, right? Now even, so this SDG now almost the first phase already gone. Now still we are talking about implementation. How you incorporate this to your institution. Yeah, I understand it. Because it's so complicated and people actually make it complicated. Because as technical people, I understand that one. They are basically talking about their own, the paradigms, but they don't think it as a holistic approach. Okay. So then the next one is what are the strategy factors that lead the greatest opportunities for your institution? As I mentioned you earlier, your institution, your program, how you align that one. You are focusing to that one, right? Not their focus. As an example, government. If you are a director in, as an example, in your TVET or whatever, so then you have to see these are the scopes, right? So these are the deliverables. Don't give these all to all institutions. You select, take a team, right? Appoint a team and see this target by that institution, this target by that academic part I'm talking about, right? Because we need skilled people to serve in these areas. As an example, greening, right? Maybe you have to go for now renewable energy, right? What is the best institution for that one? And automation, going for electrical vehicles. What is the best institution to implement that one? Or are you not changing your curriculum and you stay with your existing one? Or even now drone even coming with that one. When I went to Korea, I saw there is a separate institution they set up only for drone technology. Why? Because that is the future. That is the future. Because you have to prepare, because as academics, because sometimes our cycle is not like business cycle. You can't actually put a product within 2 months, 6 months, etc. Because sometimes it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, even degrees maybe 4 year, your output. Right? So therefore, the last one is, as I mentioned earlier, take the opportunity, but you have to explore that opportunities there. So how do you integrate? So it's a readiness. Now, after even finishing the first phase, we are talking about readiness. What level? Right? Why? Because readiness means one is the planning part. That is the thing we are talking about today, actually. That is the strategy. Strategy is a planning tool. It's a broader one, but it's a planning tool. Right? So you have to have a strategy. So it doesn't mean that you actually have a, the topics, these are the things that we have to do. Because in the strategic plan, as you know, that's why the strategic management is very, very important. You have to plan for your implementation as well. For implementation, you need money, because sometimes you have a very good plan, but no budget. Government is saying no, because of the COVID and all, we haven't got money, budget for this. So therefore, sorry, we can't fund. Because sometimes you spend maybe 6 months, 1 year to develop that one, but end of the day, no money. Right? So these are the real tests when you do the planning, plan for implementation, and the people. Because sometimes you are talking about these all skills. You are talking about these skills, student skill. But do we have, as lecturers, as leaders, as coordinators, do we understand these 4IR skills or SDG skills that what we want, reading skills? First, our resources, even the people skills, very important. Staff, they must be aware and equipped with all these. Right? So all now as an example in business, we call 5 M's, resources. Right? Money, even the equipments. Do we have latest equipment in our laboratories to teach this? Green technology, solar panels, and then the vehicle, automobile, these batteries, electric vehicles, these technologies, even recycling, reuse. These all you have to incorporate into that. Right? So then the implementation, and then you have to have a evaluation and control. So you have to plan. You can't actually, now I have seen all these there actually. All they are in the broader context, but individual institutions, you have to go into minor details, narrow it down, only focus in your business or scope in your institution. Okay. So then as I mentioned earlier, all these must be there. Organizing means resources. So actually you have to have, in the planning, you see whether all these are available, but in organizing, you have to plan for all these to integrate into your institution, right? All the resources. Right? That means funding is very important. Your people, so your staff development programs must be there to get that skills into your staff, right? And the equipments and environment, infrastructures there. So we are talking about digital delivery, but some schools still, not schools even, lecturers don't have laptops even, right? Students use smartphones. We all struggling. Right? We can talk high, but when it comes to implementation, these are the hard reality you have to face. And leading, very important. This is also leadership development. This is another part I have seen lacking in education area. Why? Because we don't take this leadership as a serious thing in institutions. Normally promotion, lecturers go into head of department, dean, because sometimes without going into that one, appoint as a vice chancellor. Don't understand the management of these academic institutions. Right? So therefore leadership is very important. We not managers. You can manage. That means you can sign, you can approve. That is not leading. Leading means you have to motivate everyone in your institution to achieve these targets. Right? You can motivate, but as I mentioned earlier, you have to give all the resources. We have to motivate them, right? And the ability improve, you have to that one, etc. And also controlling, as you mentioned earlier. Right. So this is the framework I'm not going to touch here. So as an example, external environment now already given. What is that one in this topic? That is sustainable development goals. The opportunities and threats coming from this one, we have to narrow it down because of the timing and all, right? So this is the model you can study and start with that one. And this is the important part, as I mentioned earlier, internal structures. Why? Because whether you grab that one as an opportunity depend on your capabilities. What are the capabilities? These internal capabilities. Because sometimes you don't even think what is there, what is available with our culture. As an example, whether our culture, our institutional culture prepared for change. Some institutions, some countries, very difficult to implement this kind of thing because the culture does not support these kind of changes, right? But sometimes it happens accidentally as well. As an example, COVID, right? Now people gone into digital to some extent. Now if we tried into that mode, online delivery, etc., right, formal way, can you implement? I don't think so. It is very difficult. It will take long time to move from face to face to digital, online, right? So then you have to formulate your mission, already there, vision, mission, but now you have to see how you incorporate your SDG goals into your mission, existing one. As an example, still you teach or develop in this petroleum based that one, right? So now you have to see our mission, whether how we change that one, right? Sometimes vision and mission gone into align with the SDG as well. Because we are going to incorporate this. You are not going to completely develop new strategy for this one, right? So your vision, mission, and then your objectives, right? See how you incorporate this into your objectives and your strategies, right? New strategies, and maybe you have to change, but your policies, and then you have to have a program for each and every activities, right? So you can have a program, as an example, say green in TVET, right? Your infrastructure, your institution level, because SDG goals you can incorporate from that one. That's a program. As an example, your recruitment, you see, you can you incorporate all these, as an example, equity, gender balance, and all into your institution. That is SDG, right? Even your promotion, right? Even your institutional, the cleaning and environment and your usage, electric usage. So this is SDG implementation is not only curriculum, because my task is now institutional, that one. So therefore, you have to take it holistically, because if your institution, as an example, you don't care about water usage, right? No recycle, no reuse water. You drain your water down to, again, river back, right? You don't use that one for gardening, etc., because that is done by private sector institution. But I have not seen many public institutions take it very seriously, because it's free, it's given water from government, electricity from government, they pay the bill, right? Most of the institution academic. So you have to see how you incorporate into your institution, right? So curriculum is one part, because I'm not going to touch all this, because I think most of this now even Professor Margaret also touched that one, and most of the programs now aligning with that one. But implementation strategy as a nation is different, because the government has the responsibility. So you have to support that one, right? So, and you, as an example, your reuse in your institution, because these TVET and universities are very big. Some universities or institutions, TVET, have about 20,000, 30,000 students, even 10,000 people, like a village, right? So SDG implementation throughout your institution. I'm not going to explain. I think you understand what is there. And your budget, very important, as I mentioned you earlier. When you prepare, you have to see whether you have budget, right? As an example, now if you have old, the bulbs, now you have to replace with energy saving bulb, right? So you have to cost it, budget, right? Or your, the energy. Maybe can you install solar? Cost. So good proposal, but can you implement it, right? And also you can have a lab there for teaching. As an example, when I was vice chancellor, I signed agreement with private institution, private organization. They gave it free of charge, complete educational kit for that one. Even HVAC, lighting given free of charge, India. So you can, because you can't say you don't have money, but you have to plan. If you have a plan, then as head of institution leaders, you will be able to find how to handle those. Right. So this is, even though even earlier one, you can see So it's not actually the one way, right? So you always have to get feedback and review. Because why? Because the environment is always changing. Your external environment changing, your internal environment changing. So therefore your strategies, it's not 5-year strategy, 1-year strategy, 2-year strategy, etc. This model, if you want to implement SDG, you always have to, scan your environment, your internal and external factors. What are the new, because opportunity is not there all the time. New opportunities coming, right? So that's why it's this SDG one. So they say it's a cycle, same concept, right? So this is the SDG 4 framework. I think review for Malaysia I got from that one. So these are the SDG. So do they have framework? Yes, all there, right? Four fairly good out of 5, right? All the comments given. I think you have all the reports there. I'm not going through all these, right? But when you go down, actually education is good, but other goals I have seen very low, right? So institution and agencies with clear mandate. There is no unit with MOH, Ministry of Higher Education, that is responsible for its SDGs. But all research trajectory are linked to SDGs, right? All the given. So this is your, after 5 years, your existing state. That is the environmental analysis, where you are, because you don't start again from the scratch, right? Start from there, build from here to go into that level. As an example, monitoring and evaluation, right? So this is only the SDG framework for education. It doesn't mean that you have to stick into SDG 4, because TVET and education is responsible for most of the SDG goals. Right, all these there I'm not going to touch as an example. So you got 32 at the end of 2021, right? Education. Right. So environmental scanning, this only principle I'm telling you, as I explained you earlier. First go through the internal environment, very important this one, because all these are given actually, right? This SDG came from these, right? But as I mentioned you earlier, as an institution, because you may have different conferences, different development programs for different, like 4IR implementation, SDG implementation, greening implementation, digital delivery, online delivery, right? Take all into this, right? As an example, 4IR is a technological force, right? The SDG is coming as a political and legal force, because we don't have mandate. It's given by the government to implement, right? And socio-cultural forces also there to a certain extent now to move into these green technologies, etc. Economic forces also. So these all you have to analyze. I'm not going to touch all these because of the timing, right? So this is the normal framework we call PEST or pestal analysis. Now your SDG is there. You can, if you do it, actually go with all these. That's why now as an example, Industry 4.0 and your green technology, right? All these incorporate into your framework and try to go with the SDG as well, because if you go with SDG, sometimes there may be contradiction with Industry 4.0 and the other your factors. There may be opportunities from other areas as well, right? So this is the framework. As I mentioned earlier, it's a clear guidelines they are throughout, right? The top level number 1, I said global SDG global goals. Right, it's regional. As an example, you have TVET, you have UNOVOC, etc. And country, as I mentioned you earlier, the Malaysia, India, and all the countries, they have their SDG agenda, right? And then institution level, normally I consider it as an implementing agency now, because the top level vision, mission, and all given the scope. So those are the top level strategies, right? Now, in that framework I mentioned you earlier, the critical one is select your, the agendas depending on your institutional scope and your business. I'm talking about business means not business. I'm talking about your, the program area, etc. What are the relevance that one? Prepare this implementing, very important. Your resources, as I mentioned earlier, your programs you have to develop, your budget, critical, how you funding, because this one, it may be an opportunity. I'll explain you earlier. SDG is an opportunity. Why? Because there are a lot of funding available for your institutions. If you have a very good plan, if you go with a nice plan, you will be able to get the funding for your staff development and all, right? So that focus must be there. So this is another one I got from UNESCO. right? National level, global level, there are a lot of, the clashes there. But you have to get from these and refine into your vision, mission, strategies. And this again.
Excuse me, Prophet. Can you please check if that the slide is the correct one? We have displayed in the screen now. Can you see the screen now? Is that the same as the one you showed right now?
Yeah, slightly maybe different, but will be okay.
Okay, we just say next until we reach that slide.
Okay. Yeah. So this is another one same as the the starting from UN Secretary General, that global level up to regional and level. So this is the Malaysia SDG governance, right? So this is the government commitment already given. You see, started in 2015, right? Number 1, then they set up National SDG Council, right? And then number 3 is the steering committee there. All your institutions, I think even TVET, MOH, all they are in that one, right? And then technical committees there. So phase 1 already finished. Now report you have seen, you can download from the internet, you can go into that one. Now actually in the phase 2, your goals and targets. And so the next one actually now remaining goals as mainly implementation part we have to focus on. Right. So then the UNESCO UNEVOC one, you can see these 5 pillars. They introduce greening campus, greening curriculum, greening research, greening community, and greening institution culture. I think this is very good model because it covers actually everything. But they use greening. They concentrate only on that one. But SDG is broader than that one. Understand it. Because SDG is not only the environmental. SDG is holistic one. It's a very balanced. We call like a balanced scorecard. It's economic, social, and environmental all covering. Why? Because if your economy is not strong, now you know what, with COVID, you can't talk about this one even, because some governments are struggling, right? Because you have to grow with the economy and you have to have the balance, right? So therefore, don't only think about green, because it's very important, green in TVET, but at the same time, you have to incorporate the other areas as well in the economic and social areas. Right. So this the opportunities as an example given by the UNESCO. So how do universities help the SDGs? Right. Provide knowledge, innovation, solutions to SDGs. That opportunity for you. Right. Create current and future SDG implementers. Opportunity because they are supporting. And then demonstrate how to support, adopt and implement SDGs in governance, operation and culture. Right. So all given. How do the SDG help universities? Right. So basically, SDG create demand. As an example, industries, new industries coming, new sectors coming, new academic, the programs you can start. So these are the opportunities. So that's how, because this is the framework, you have to understand in your discipline, what are the areas you can create? What are the, maybe new schools? As an example, Korea, school for drones, right? So maybe you need school for renewable energy, or campus or a university or a TVET institution, covering all these areas. As an example, very important now, drone maintenance. Maybe now the renewable energy, right? Green energy there, but you have to have you have to service those technical people. TVET has the opportunity now to go for those, right? Or you can see as I mentioned earlier, create new funding streams, support collaboration with new external and internal partners. You can go to industry and say, okay, now you have this technology, but do you have people to, service? Because service is very important, because if there is no service, your new AC or, the vehicle, etc., people will not buy it later, no demand. So the TVET, because they have to partner with these educational institutions, you can create this environment because of this SDG. Yeah, so these all I'll go basically quickly why the SDG implementation need TVET. You have to give knowledge, skills, attitude, all underpinning the implementation of SDGs. There are a lot of new industries, new educational institutions, new curriculum, right? All coming up with this, creating current and future SDG implementations, right? Because now this SDG also aligned with the IR 4.0 as well. Even though I am talking about SDG here, you have to go hand in hand this one. because SDG also now changing so much with the IR 4.0 initiatives, right? These are not two, these are actually synchronized things. Why TVET? As an example, the principle of SDG through organizational governance, operational culture, green in TVET. You never. You have to incorporate, because in any country, these are very big institutions, right? TVET is even bigger than university, that one, right? So many people, at least 50 to 75% students after A level or secondary schools come into TVET. It's a big institution, you can incorporate. And then cross-sectoral leadership in implementation, very important, right? So because you have to have partnerships, you have to work with industry, you have to work with government. Government can't, or the Ministry of Education or MyRevet can't work on their own, right? So you have to have a partnership, right? You have to talk to them. They, your leadership, as an example, the government, ministries, like MyRevet, etc. They have to go to institutions and talk to them, right? Because you can't say implement this one, it won't work, because technically, I know a lot of people don't understand what this SDG is, how do we implement, because if you go into internet, it's bombarded with so many informations, confused information as well, right? The balance between these, very, very important, the holistic approach throughout this SDG implementation in your institution. Right, why TVET? I think already discussed this one, demonstrating TVET impact on SDG implementation, because TVET is one of the main implementation agency, right? So therefore, governments should fund, right? I think I'm sure there are Ministry of Education officials maybe there, MyRevet officials there, and the TVET institutions understand TVET is one of the major implementation, support them, fund them, develop their staff, develop their infrastructure. Very, very important. It's an opportunity for TVET leaders, right? Grab that opportunity, but you have to explain. You will be able to explain that one, because sometimes they don't understand, because it's coming from top down, right? Because it's not like your own institutional strategy. Okay, building new external and internal partnership, very important. I think Professor Margita also mentioned that one. You have to partner with industries, you have to partner with other institutions, because with this SDG there are so many disciplinary streams are also coming, right? Access for new funding streams, adapting comprehensive and globally accepted definition of a responsibly and globally aware TVET institution. This is not individual work, right? So this is group work, teamwork. Even perhaps we have to have a separate program for team building. How you work with all these government institution, industry partners, funding agencies, work as a team. Institution work as a team, not as a electrical teacher and your automotive department, electrical department, etc. Okay. So this again contribution to SDG. You can do research. Already touched Dr. Margita. So therefore, I don't want to go in detail. Education, leadership, very important, because end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, you are the leaders. You have to support the leaders, other governments, ministries, etc. As an example, sometimes the secretary is not technical enough to understand this. Sometimes, because of the background, right? And operations and government. All these very important. TVET has a big contribution. Now, this how we go for your understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Very critical, because you select these SDG goals or strategies out of these 17, depending on your scope and capabilities, right? So this is another one again based on strategy. This SDG one map means strategy. Environmental analysis, build capacity and ownership of the SDGs, right? And then identify priorities, opportunities. That what I explained. Integrate and monitor. Same wording, coming with different models. But this is the same strategic model for you to understand this very easily. Yeah, research-based, normally we call VRIO approach. You have to see whether you have these, right? Don't just jump into this as an opportunity all the time, because you might be, sometimes trapped, right? Resources, your assets, all the assets, right? Your maybe means people, your technology, your resources, money, all the assets you have to see. Do we have this? This is a strength. If it is, you have that one, it's a strength. If you don't have, weakness. Why? Because other people may have that one than you. Because normally when you do that analysis, you have to compare with your industry as well, right? Other people. Because some universities, rank in high. Why? Because of this, they have many assets, competencies, processes, and skills. Because otherwise, you can rank all the technical universities TVETs grade 1. No, because they have these resources in different levels. That is the difference between these. Nothing to do with SDG or anything, because they don't have the resources to explore these opportunities coming from these, and it becomes a sometimes threat. Why? Because some institutions with their the capabilities, they grow very fast, and the knowledge. Yeah. So I put this map. This is called Michael Porter's organizational evaluation, right? Value chain. So here you can understand what are your problems. What do we need? All these SDG outcomes, right? So you can put all these, even I put 21st century skills with SDG, right? These all, I think Dr. Margaret also mentioned, these are very, very critical with this, because now you can't actually train person to that particular skill set, because this with IR 4.0, these skills are changing very fast, right? So therefore you have to prepare people where they are flexible to learn again, relearn, reskill, deskill, etc. Okay. Now in your institution, what do you have to do? Your primary activities, your student teachers funds, your programs, are they okay with that one? What are the your programs aligned with the SDG, right? And research areas, what are the areas, and what are the skills? The knowledge, skills, and attitudes you give to achieve these SDG goals, right? So that is your primary. But the issue is sometimes this is why you have to analyze, right? What are the programs relevant to you, right? What are the teaching capabilities you need? What are the research areas you can do? Right? Because you can't do all the 17 research areas in institution. At least get good one and focus on that one. That is your success, right? And even here you have to give all your inputs, right? Students, even very important, teachers, funds, get that one. And then your supporting systems, right? This may be your opportunities or threats. As an example, your recruitment. Can you get good people? There are CPD programs. Their turnover. If people are leaving your staff, it may be very difficult for you to train them for the SDG goals, etc. Because again, new people come in, they don't understand what is. And infrastructure, your curriculum standard and assessment, your academic administration, because some universities even don't do it very frequently, right? Major curriculum revision only after 2 years. If you have that kind of policy, you can't do it. Right? You have to adopt this one very quick and fast into your curriculums, your standards, your assessment methods, and then your collaboration and network, right? Your institution's capability. So these are your strengths and weaknesses. Right. So then from that one, these are only examples, right? Because because I'm sure you have very wide range of institutions, the disciplines, etc. there. So therefore, I can't exactly say these are the things you have to get, but by using this framework, you have to do it. Actually, this should be a maybe 2-3 days workshop by individual institution, etc. Sit there together and go through this one very seriously, right? Because strategies, you can't just touch the surface, right? Because it's too broader, you don't understand what is there. Take one opportunity, right? Or even threat, because that is also a strategy, right? Because if you don't face to that threat or don't address that one, your institution will be perhaps decline your ranking, etc. Yeah. So your vision, mission, whether you can align with that one, top management support and all. I'll give this one, you read it and understand, right? And your, again, internal factors like knowledge, already I mentioned that one, ability of educators to engage in this one, because sometimes you tell them, leaders say, okay, do this, but if they can't do it, what are the abilities? Right? There are maybe physical ability, right? There are maybe knowledge not there too, right? So all the abilities are very important. Ability of educators to engage in this one. SDG promotion in education. Sometimes you get that one, but no one is promoting. Your leadership is very, very important for this one. Because if you start with the teachers, if you pressurize the teachers to do this, adapt to the curriculum, it won't work. They can't do it. As I know this is a leadership development program, I assume that you are leaders, right? You take these initiatives and drive it and motivate them. Otherwise, don't pressure teachers and your curriculum developers or your coordinators, program coordinators to do it, because this is a top, down. Basically, your leadership is very, very important. Another one is resistant to change. That you have to, you have to analyze and address those issues as well. Right. Finally, what are the things? Maybe you come up with.
Profit, to remind you, there's another 4 minutes left. Yeah.
Sorry.
Minutes left.
Okay, I'll finish that one quickly. So this is the model basically for formulation. You have to get the strategies for that one. So the institution level, as I mentioned you earlier, there are different level of strategies, right? You can have one strategy, right? University or that level, you have to have a strategy. Your program level, we call business strategy, and your function level. Now, mainly we concentrate this one. This is the program level, right? Curriculum, etc. But all these should align if you want to adopt this SDG. As an example, institution level, right? You have to decide whether you grow. That means if you have funding, new schools, faculties, new skills you can incorporate and all, innovation research, that's a growth, right? Sustainable, if you don't have capabilities, funding, right, just try to survive in this SDG. And the retrenchment, some areas you see is outdated in this SDG world or 4IR world, right? You have to see how you either change that one, the departments, or you upskill or reskill that one people in those areas. Right. So then curriculum research, as an example, these are models. You can see how you go with your scope, depending on your capabilities. You are going for narrow or broader. Narrow means you only do your curriculum, etc. Broader, you do throughout that one, your institution, etc. Right. Research and partnership also same. And then you do with the existing or new structures. Again, we depend on your capabilities, as I mentioned you earlier. So these are all models there for you to think, right? These are, yeah. So what do? Curriculum framework for SDG, the last one, mainly we go with the knowledge, skills, and value attitudes. So I'm not going through this one. This is there for all 17 goals, right? You can go through that one. I'll give I think link is there. You can see SDG for link to all. As an example, 5, you have to have 5 to all, right? 8, most of these things. So this is again, how you link that one, right? The curriculum, well, I'm not touching that one. These all available, the link there for all actually, not only for TVET, starting from primary, secondary, TVET, higher education, all education areas covered. I actually put in my presentation only the few, because I know the timing is not there. So you can see what are the knowledge for poverty, how you incorporate into your curriculum, skills and applications to address this poverty, right? And values to reduce the poverty in that one, right? And then the zero hunger, very important, because end of the day, we train the people, we give the skilled people for all these industries where address this hunger, right? The food industries and the manufacturing industries support that one, right? So therefore you have to include again all these, all there actually, right? You can go through very comprehensive reports there. And health, of course, right? Even TVET has even nursing and all, very important, and even food and hygiene areas and the good health and well-being, the values and attitudes we have to incorporate into that one. Not only curriculum, even the students, skills, etc. So all these you can see, even education there, how you incorporate into curriculum, and gender and equity throughout you have to incorporate in your assignments, your programs, etc. All there, right? Clean and water. So I basically leave it up to you, and then you have to have monitoring and evaluation. So you have seen that regional one, even the national one is there. You have to align your one because your KPIs are different, right, to that one. But you have to achieve that KPIs as well, and all the models there, right? And as I mentioned you earlier, Ministry of Education, national steering committees, and implementing agencies. If you go through this information, all there, right? Okay, so this is some of these, I think, evaluation in Malaysia, right? References, go through that one, all this information there. The framework is given. I hope you will be able to now at least think about this SDG implementation, or basically how you adapt this into your institutional strategy, right? Thank you very much for listening. I know it's not easy to, do this. This is basically 2-3 days, as I mentioned you earlier. So arrange your individual institutions, workshops, brainstorming, because it's you. Other people can't do it because you understand your capabilities. Very important. The opportunities and threat you can analyze. What are the areas you can do it, and I hope you will take it very seriously and implement. As an implementing agency, you have prepare your strategy for your institution. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Prof. It was such a knowledgeable presentation. This is not an individual work, right? Everybody needs to cooperate, integrate, and work together to achieve the goal. Well, Prof, as the new Director General of CPSC, you are responsible for representing the CPSC in its engagement, ensuring that its vision of becoming an intergovernmental TVET leader for sustainable development that will be carried out to its network of 16 member countries and 2 partner organizations in the Asia Pacific region. It will be great if you could share the strategies for the sustainability development.
Thank you very much. I think it's a good question. And yeah, so one thing is, so CPSC is a intergovernmental organization. So basically, our main scope is teacher training, or we call staff development of this TVET sector, right? Not only teachers, all the areas, teachers, leaders, etc. So with that scope, as I mentioned earlier, so this is already incorporated into our strategic plan, right? So our strategic plan, as an example, so number 1, we conduct programs, right? Teacher training or staff development programs. You can see most of our teacher training programs, we incorporate all these, right? As an example, for IR there, you can see how to incorporate that one, SDG goals, green TVET. So we organize programs, regional programs, and that one. That's how we support using our programs. And then our institutional level also we incorporated. So as I mentioned you earlier, that is there in our strategic plan. Even the vision is also there. I think if you go through the vision of that one, CPSC, so it's our the TVET leader for sustainable development. So CPSC set that as our vision and mission, right? So we basically drive this SDG because our scope is, as I mentioned earlier, we can't do the degree program, TVET programs. No, our focus is staff development. We focus, or we basically give awareness, give training programs. That is one part. The second part, you can see if you go to our website, there are so many publications, right? There are books you can see, Green in TVET, and all we incorporate into our, this textbook, etc. And also you can see there are conferences, organized research conferences based on these areas. As Professor Margarita mentioned, actually these are all going together. Greening, SDG, right? Even though we talk, because 35 minutes you can't cover all these things, but end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, take it as a holistic one. Because if you try to implement one by one, it's not easy. So that is also there, right? Training programs, as I mentioned earlier, and then our research, our publications, we all incorporated. And we have very small institutions, not like yours, 20, 30,000 people. We have very few, less than 30 staff here. But basically we do based on outsourcing. We have experts throughout the region, not only region, global as well. If we need someone from, Korea or Japan or UK, we don't mind. We get people, the best people for our programs. So therefore, we have very less, but still we incorporate into our strategies. As an example, our recruitment, the gender, equity, and all we incorporate into that one, right? And even green in TVET concepts. Our institutions, as an example about our consumption, our way of using energy. These all incorporated as a very small institution, right? Because we can't do everything, right? because it's a small institution, depend on our scope. Our, our scope number one, that's why I mentioned you earlier, we do teach, staff development in these areas. We do publication, we do research publications, seminars, etc. Yes, mainly that's how we incorporate SDG into the Colombo Plant Staff College, our focus.
Well, it seems that we need to incorporate SDG in every program, yeah?
Yes.
Holistically.
Yeah, holistic approach.
The answer, Prof. Well, dear audience and respective speakers, before we move on further with our third speaker of the day, let us sit back and enjoy the UTHM corporate video. So let's watch and please enjoy it. Welcome back. The respective audience, now we had reached the final session of the day, and without any delay, with full of honor as respect, I would like to invite Technologist Zainab Ahmad. Assalamualaikum Tia Zainab. Apa khabar?
Waalaikumsalam, baik, terima kasih.
Okay, her keynote entitled SDG 4 Quality Education, Malaysia TVET Reform. And before we proceed, let me brief on T.S. Zainab's professional background. T.S. Zainab Ahmad is currently the Director General at Department of Polytechnic and Community College Education, Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia. DPCCE is the biggest TVET provider in Malaysia for public and private TVET institutions, including polytechnics and community colleges. She has worked in area of national policies and strategic direction for TVET and lifelong learning in community colleges and polytechnics, training and career development, including internationalization initiative for lecturers and students. She started her career as a lecturer in the electrical engineering department of Unku Omar Polytechnic in 1985. TS Zainab holds a degree in electronics and electrical engineering from Loughborough University, United Kingdom, a master's in power engineering from Putra University, Malaysia, and a postgraduate diploma in psychology counselling from National University of Malaysia. At international level, she represents Malaysia as the governing board member for Southeast Asia Ministry of Education Officer, Regional Centre for Lifelong Learning. She is also a governing board member for Universiti Tun Hussein on Malaysia. For the newly established Malaysian TVET Council, she is the vice chairman for the TVET Focus Group and head the council secretariat. She is also a member of the Joint Technical Committee for Malaysia TVET Quality Assurance under the coordination of Malaysian Qualification Agency and Department of Skill Development. Dear TS Zainab, the screen is yours. Now please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator, Dr. Yusmawarti. Good morning to our distinguished speakers. I think I heard quite excellent presentation from Professor Margarita Pavlova, and followed by our esteemed Director General from CPSC, Prof. I can't pronounce your full name, Prof. Wick, sorry. And I would also like to thank AKEPT and UTHM for inviting me to this very auspicious webinar. And I think being the last speaker, I really have to perform my very best to keep you all in touch with us until the end of the session. So the topic that I've been given on TVET is a very, to me, is a very macro planning for our country. Yeah. Okay. Can I just start off by informing you we are very much in agreement with the SDG in terms of ensuring the inclusivity and equitable quality education, specifically in TVET, and to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. We do aspire that education enables an upward social economic mobility for all individuals in the country. And TVET is a tool for the country to tackle basically poverty, as well as invigorate the economies of the people of the country. And as you know, the pandemic hit most of us quite hard. And in Malaysia, before the pandemic, only 32% of our workers had some form of tertiary education before they entered the labour market. So after this is over, we hope that during this pandemic period, the initiatives that the government has put forward in terms of upskilling and reskilling our people would be doing some justice to them. So we aspire to reduce the barriers to skills and development through TVET, and also we also provide lifelong learning opportunities basically for the youth and the adults of the country. Can I have the next slide? Okay. For my presentation, actually, I would like to emphasize on two important initiatives for the country, and I'll be talking mainly at the macro level. It's how we ensure the efficient and the effective delivery of TVET. So to me, it is a Malaysian journey, as I've titled it, is a Malaysian journey. And I'm sure many countries have gone through it, and many countries are still going through and enduring the phases in this journey. So can I have the next slide? Okay. For a start, those who will benefit from my presentation, I will capture for you what we have through our the general landscape for the education and how we progress to TVET. And permit me as the Director General of Polytechnics and Community Colleges, I'll be sharing some of our landscapes. And before we go on further to the national agenda for TVET. So the next slide, please. All right. I've taken a page from the UNESCO website. This is showing the normal pathway for full-time students embarking on the TVET journey in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, we have many platforms to get on TVET. And it starts as early as 13 years old, meaning during the lower secondary school, they do some basic vocational education so that this will, increase their interest and attract them to further their TVET pathway. So after secondary school, those acquiring their SPM equivalent to O levels, if they are TVET inclined, they have many places or many institutions that they can pursue their TVET. As you can see, dominantly, we from the polytechnics and community colleges, we do offer certificate and diploma, and also some training certificate and diplomas from ministries, other ministries such as the Ministry of Human Resource, Ministry of Youth and Sports, to name a few. So one milestone that the country has done is most of our formal programs, the 2-year certificates and the 3 years diplomas, they are already accredited either through the Malaysian Qualification Agency or through the Department of Skills Development, those taking NOS. So, can I have the next slide? Okay, permit me to take this opportunity to show you our polytechnic and community colleges landscape. We are after 2020, we are back as Ministry of Higher Education. As you might well know, when we were in 2018 to 2020, January 2020, we were still with Ministry of Education. Now we've gone back to Ministry of Higher Education. So we represent around 20% of the total enrollment of TVET certificate and diplomas for the country. So we have 36 polytechnics and 104 community colleges all over. We normally, when we discuss about polytechnics, they are predominantly diplomas and they have campuses, and their capacity for each polytechnic is between 1,000 to 5,000 full-time students, whereas community colleges, as the name clearly indicates, it serves the community and it has a smaller enrollment capacity of less than 1,000, basically performing a two-pronged TVET for the full-time students and lifelong learning for the local communities. Next slide, please. Okay, these are our current deliverables with a total of teaching lecturers or instructors. We are more than 10,000. We are a scheme, a teaching scheme, a government service scheme on our own. We split from the Ministry of Education. We have our own scheme and I'm the Director General for that. So with enrollment of students, actually more than 100,000, a slight dip during these 2 years of COVID pandemic. We normally hit around 120,000 enrollment for both polytechnics and community colleges. As you can see, most of our programs, we have accreditation through the Board of Engineers for our technology and engineering diplomas. We also have, we are recognized by Malaysian Board of Technologies for the other non-engineering programs. We also have programs around 280 that falls under the Malaysian Qualification Agency. So we have I think maybe Prof. Wick from CPSC already know that for APEC, we are also the top 10 polytechnics that have acquired APEC certification. So that's an international achievement for us. And as polytechnics and community colleges, although the pandemic hit hard, but we have maintained our graduate employability rate to be more than 90%. So that is a testimony upon our more than 50 years of existence in the country for TVET. So can I have the next slide? Okay, all right. For this next slide, I move on to who are the TVET players in the country for Malaysia as a whole. This slide is actually taken from a presentation that we've done early this year in February, to be specific, on the 11th February, when we presented to the Prime Minister then, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, the first meeting on the TVET, Malaysian TVET Council. So to address the inclusivity, if I put it in a positive way, but to inform the top management of the country, which I think they do not need further emphasis, that Malaysia has very many TVET providers. If I can just put it mildly, very many TVET providers. So as you can see, in total there, we captured 1,295 TVET institutions from 11 ministries professing to do TVET, whether it is from the education mainstream or from the training mainstream. There are 640 public TVET institutions. As you can see, the education for Polytechnic, Community College and MTUN, we are the stakeholder for higher education. We have 22 state-owned TVET institutions that we rarely actually engage them and hear about what they do, but they do contribute towards TVET productivity for the country. And you will see that there are registered TVET, private TVET providers, which is 633, all of them. So to set the direction straight for the national TVET policy in the future is very much a daunting task. These 11 ministries, and I think the key word that we put forward during our presentation is about coordinating the ecosystem. So maybe when we say ecosystem, that should jive in well also with the SDG aspirations. So during the first TVET Council meeting, we presented 2 papers to get the mandate to coordinate and to get the mandate to plan out the first set of strategic direction, if I can put it that way. So that sets the scene for the new TVET era, whereby we have a coordination and the decision making comes direct from the Prime Minister. Okay, if I can have the next slide, please. All right. So for this slide, I'd just like to inform that we are taking stock of things. This journey, we are having it open mind, open eyes, that the policies that we are coming up with, it is not a brand new policy, like I mentioned just now. It's more of a coordination. And just to inform you also, between the 11 ministries, we have about 7 different acts that are more or less having TVET in place. So the issues and challenges I will share with you. We have consolidated into 5 major topics. And for this TVET journey, we must also take into account what we have planned out and we have aligned with for the 12th Malaysia Plan, because our economic planning unit, when they were writing up and formulating the 12th plan, we were always in constant engagement with them. So there's the synergy between what is written in the Malaysia Plan and also what we have planned out for in the National TVET Council. So my next slide. Okay. As you can see, this is roughly, I gather for the next slide, what I've gathered is putting into the journey. As I mentioned, the journey, the awareness actually for our country, it started at the end of the 9th Malaysia Plan with Boston Consulting Group coming in and informing us through their study that we have to be more resilient, we have to be more effective and efficient in the spending for TVET. So mainstreaming and a lot of recognizing the challenges and consolidating started with the 10th Malaysia Plan and expanding and how we want to encourage more of our students to embrace TVET programs. It started as early as the 10th Malaysia Plan. And it was pursued in the 11th Malaysia Plan. Well, that time the buzzword was TVET as the game changer. So awareness that TVET players, we are on the supply side, the institutions must talk frequently and concurrently with the industry because they are providing the jobs. So in terms of overlapping, we want to narrow the overlap, we want to narrow the gap. Most of this initiative is started in the 11th Malaysia Plan. So further coordination in terms of governance, especially like I inform you about the 1,295 TVET institutions. So a strong awareness that we need to change our ways of doing things. It has been put into this 12th Malaysia Plan. So the prosperity program for 2030 has also incorporated TVET. As you can see, if you from Margarita did mention about what countries, whatever they do, first they think about quantity. Yes, so our country also, the first thing they realize what in terms of quantity, we are not there yet. We targeted in 2020, 35% of our workers to be coming from the TVET, but at the end of 2020, we only achieved 28%. So a lot of work to do to encourage TVET, and maybe many of you know the branding of TVET as the second choice should not be should change. We should not think as for TVET to be the second choice. Okay, can I have the next slide? Okay, as I mentioned, these are the 5 consolidated issues and challenges that we have discovered when we did our town hall. Actually, we had a very lengthy 1 or 2 years town hall session whereby we engaged with almost everybody, the stakeholders. This is what we have found, the issues and challenges amongst them from low coordination and non-uniform program fees, like if you are from TVET of the government sector, you will be charging lower fees, like for polytechnics and community colleges. For 1 semester, we only charge 200. But then if you ask the TVET providers, from the private, they have to charge more because they have to take into account other aspects of running their TVET institution. Whereas for fully funded institution like ours, most of our funding comes from the government coffers. So in terms of quality also, if you can see about quality, people are sometimes unclear about the articulation pathway, whether should they or is it preferable for themselves to go for programs that are under a certain ministry. Is it accredited or not? Is JPK a good program to go through, or maybe they want to further study and yet what is it about their employment? So questions about quality, and although we have the Malaysian qualification framework, sometimes people do not really refer to the levels in the qualification framework. So when they embark into the job market, if they say they have a diploma, it might not be equivalent to a level 4 diploma like it should be. So their pay is not commensurated well when they embark into the job market. So these are some of the problems. And I mentioned just now in terms of maybe branding. So the branding for TVET is still a second choice or not a very preferable. Many students prefer to pursue their qualification, their studies in universities, whereas actually they are more TVET inclined, but they look at the degree more than they look at what TVET qualification has to offer. Yeah. Another aspect is about industry. In Malaysia, industry participation is maybe not like what it is in Germany or in Europe or maybe in Korea or in Australia, where we have done comparative studies, and we find that these countries, the industry partners are very much hand in hand when providing opportunities for TVET students and graduates. So in Malaysia, we will have to work harder to get the industry's attention. And of course, some industry, even though they take our students, but they do not give the pay equivalent to what is expected. Yeah? And last but not least, in terms of funding, many institutions are being disturbed about their funding model. How do they sustain for the future in terms of their institutions? So if they want to take up TVET programs as a business sense and not education, well, they will find it difficult to get students, because in terms of the fees that they charge, they have to work it well, because we want to ensure it is economically viable for students to go into their institutions. Okay, so can I have the next slide then? All right. So now we come to what the government has put in store for us in terms of the 12 Malaysia plan. I will just maybe zoom into this book where it's relevant to us. It's chapter 10, and for TVET it is it's called the Game Changer X, or the 10th Game Changer. They use the Roman characteristics, so you might see it as Game Changer X in the book, but it's actually the 10th Game Changer, and it focuses very much on TVET. Okay, so this chapter actually starts off introducing to you about the education system, where actually in terms of student enrollment from primary school, their retention to be in classes in primary school is very good. Most Malaysians do send their students, their children to schools. Is a threshold of 95% since 1990. However, when the students reach secondary level education, the enrollment rate dropped slightly. But however, with efforts from the Ministry of Education, we have recorded an increase slightly under 95, which is 92.4% maintain their education in the secondary school. However, when you talk about at higher education level, only 32%, like I mentioned earlier, only 32% of our labor force, they have tertiary education. So this is when we move forward with SDG and digitalization, this poses a big issue, and because we need more people, more workers having STEM knowledge and embarking on 4IR and so on. So this is a problem that we are facing, and we hope that we will remedy this. So then this book also it focuses on the same objective, is to improve on TVET ecosystem to produce our future graduates. Okay, the next slide please. The next slide. Okay, these slides are what I'm sharing with you is actually appeal to why TVET is important in terms of TVET and how it can be achieved. So you can see that because in Malaysia, recently when we go for vaccination, then we found out actually we have many foreign workers. So we are very dependent on our foreign workers. For the vaccination, we also vaccinate foreign workers. Then you know vaccination rate actually more than 100%. And you scratch your head, why is it more than 100% Malaysian? Because we also vaccinate our foreign workers. So there are many foreign workers in Malaysia. So when companies have a high dependency on foreign workers, they have low compensation for our people, and our students are I would say our graduates or our students leaving secondary schools, they have that challenge between are the companies taking them or are they taking the foreign workers. So we hope to address the issue of this dependency on foreign workers. Also another big issue, like I mentioned earlier, the quality of our graduates and the industry's expectations. Industries are always saying that our graduates lack this and that, especially like they say soft skills. Those are the recurring complaints that we get from industry. So we also, in line with that, we are taking initiatives to encourage more industry collaboration. Another aspect is that we realize the communities needs upskilling. So we are coming more into the rural areas with our community colleges to empower the local community and the rural area, because we do not want them to be left behind with this advancement in technology. Also, we must ensure TVET will become the preferred choice for students. So then the TVET ecosystem, of course, we must, the time when they wrote this book, we have not really established National TVET Council. So now it's in place, and amongst the initiatives will include enhancing the single brand for TVET, and including in it also where are the areas that Malaysia has targeted in terms of technology, the 4IR technology, where we want to be at the forefront. That is the one that we are engaging with the industries and targeting the respective TVET institutions to lead. Also, of course, in terms of funding, just now I did mention one of the issues is sustainability in terms of funding. This one also, when we start using a rating system, so our institutions will be, disbursement of fund somehow will relate to how much or what kind of program they are doing, how many students they are taking in their institutions and so on. So that will come in place during this 12th Malaysia Plan. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Then my next focus is maybe what many of you are looking forward to is something that I want to share with you. Our biggest milestone so far is to get the National TVET Council approved, and then we can start serious work for the coordination. So on the 11th December, we got the cabinet approval to start the National TVET Council. The acronym is MTVET. So our first meeting we conducted on the 11th February through online. That was the meeting we had online in Ministry of Higher Education, and we proposed some key strategies and initiatives which were 100% adopted. And very good participation from the ministries who are members of the council. Next slide. Okay, this is roughly what is MTVET and what's the purpose of MTVET. So now moving forward, the policy direction and macro decisions are to be presented through this council, chaired by the PM, and once endorsed, it will be the policy for the country. So, the two objectives for MTVET is first and foremost the coordination. So the ecosystem TVET will be coordinated through all public and private institutions. So it's a series of engagement to get this done. And also this is a platform because all the TVET providers and ministries, they are members of this council. So we will be talking to everyone and engaging. So in a nutshell, what MTVET does is a collective decision to pursue our collective efforts. Okay, next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is our aspiration. The aspiration, please, the one before. The one before? Previous slide, yeah. Okay, so what we aspire to give for the country is, of course, to align with all the policies that have been developed, and especially the 12th Malaysia Plan and the current industry forward policy, plus the prosperity, yeah. And also for the industry, we know this is a four-sided aspirations for the industry, so that what they've been crying out for, the competent TVET human resource that we produce must align, must be with the industry's needs, and must be industry relevant. And for the TVET graduates, we will support in terms of their employability and job market, and also if they wish to pursue education, because there have been complaints that some TVET graduates were marginalized in terms of pursuing their tertiary education. So this council will also ensure that will not happen in the future, meaning equitable access to higher education. And also, like I mentioned, in terms of funding, the support, the resources, maybe we'll be having more sharing between the institutions, and more, how do you say, more transparent in terms of fund providing between the private and also the public. Next slide. Okay, so we had our second paper. This is the strategic thrust that we put forward. We don't want to complicate many things because it's a very complex TVET environment that we have in the country. So we try to make it simple, precise and concise. We have 3 TVET strategic trusts, and most of the initiatives and strategic directions will align through these 3 strategic trusts, namely integrated and coordinated governance. That one we've talked about lengthily just now. And industry driven, yes, that's another big component. And TVET shaping the future, meaning our TVET initiatives must always take into account that it is for the future. It's not just current, it's not just present, but we always have in mind forecasting and foresighting the future. So we embarked and got approvals. We are embarking into 6 initiatives. As you can see, these initiatives, namely in terms of the funding model and policies, how to encourage more industry to participate along with us. And then we will have a national TVET brand. Number 4 is establishing a TVET collaboration hub. I will be giving example on this one next. TVET program policies, meaning more regulated and cutting across more providers and maybe inclusive of what are the programs that have been accepted internationally. And if not for a data center, we won't go much anywhere, because whatever consolidation we need to do, we need to have a one-stop TVET data center, so that the sharing of the data, ensuring institutions which are viable and having good programs, having good students, we need this data center. Okay, next. Oh, this is the one I want to share. If you remember just now, the slide before, there are 6 initiatives and one of them is entitled TVET Collaboration Hub. So TVET Collaboration Hub is one that will link or become our communication line between our TVET institutions and the industries. Plus, we also have later on will be presented all these 3 papers in the second TVET Council meeting chaired by the current PM. Hopefully, in December, we will secure the Prime Minister's date. The implementation of this TVET Collaboration Hub will be shared, and we have some identified hubs that will be sharing in that presentation. So here, I will just share with you our model. So for the TVET Collaboration Hub, although it says hub as the key or the center to coordinate and collaborate, plus ensuring the ecosystem, it is very much based on a certain field or a certain area or a certain economic sector. Okay, the hub should be an institution that has been approved and has worked well with industry. It has been approved maybe most probably at ministry level, because we have industry center of excellence, and like in polytechnics, we have center of technologies. So we search around for a certain field, who's the best, which institution is the best for that field, and we nominate them as the hub. Working together, the hub must have spokes. Spokes are other TVET institutions, maybe smaller institutions, having similar programs, but at a lower level. So these hubs will be connected to the spokes will be connected to the hubs. So they will work as a family. And we have the enabler and the benefactor. So the enabler are basically ministries or government sectors or agencies that can facilitate us for resources, for finance and connections. They know who's who, to connect with what? And the benefactors are the companies or the industries or the sectors who are coming to hubs for the right graduates that want to employ, they want to employ for their specific body. We also encourage benefactors, professional bodies and NGOs who can add on and they will benefit from working with us. So this model we have, can I have the next slide? Okay, we have already identified 12 hubs. Maybe UTHM already spot where you are for the southern region. What we do is we also work with the economic region. So in Malaysia, the economic region, the central region, the southern, the northern and eastern, also the Sabah Sarawak, we have not decided on the Sabah Sarawak platform yet, but for the Peninsular Malaysia, these are the 12 hubs that we have identified. So we have identified specifically, if I can mention here, for UTHM, your Center of Excellence in Railway, that is the one that we have identified. We will pursue more. Let's say for now, I leave it at that. So you can see this is also that we have met a map with where our country is pursuing for the economic sector, where in line with the 12 Malaysia Plan and the economy, where the country is, I think, emphasizing where they want to go for the next level of development. Okay, next slide. Can I have the next slide? Okay. Because I want to keep it short and simple, so keeps you hanging, so that you will be enticed to ask me questions. Where I can share with you, I'll share with you. But some things are caveat until the Prime Minister say yes on the policy. So my last slide, our moving forward, the Economic Planning Unit will be monitoring on the development, specifically on the ecosystem for TVET. And MOHI has been identified as a key player in terms of this monitoring committee. And for the country, when we were into lockdown back in 2020, the establishment of our National TVET Council, it was hand in hand with the National Employment Council. So Employment Council looking on the demand side and talking more from the industry, whereas we are on the supply side. And I think many of you, we know the supply-demand ecosystem should harmonize with each other. And if I can just mention myself, coming from the engineering background, we like the closed-loop system to ensure everything moving. So a smile from Professor Wick there. So TVET Collaboration Hub is actually is a closed loop. It's giving the feedback for the supply and the demand side. And at the entry of the supply side, you can imagine you are already visualizing my closed loop model. At the entry of the supply side, decision making done by the Malaysian TVET Council. On that note, I'll end my presentation for now. Thank you. Back to the moderator. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Zainab. It was such an inspiring presentation. It seems that Malaysia is the major player for TVET, as we have more than 1,000 institutions and many strategic plans has been proposed to strengthen the national TVET. Well, maybe away from the topic that have you discussed, just like to ask you, being the first woman ever appointed as the Department of Polytechnic and Community College Education as the Director General, what is your opinion on gender equality and inclusion, specifically in DPC CE perspective?
Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator. Being a woman is not a privilege. Being a woman, as I think maybe Prof. Margarita will share with me, we work harder than the men, right? Okay, TVET in our system, okay, see the first polytechnic, it was established in 1969. So when I came to work, let's do a bit of story. Okay? When I came back from overseas to work back in 1985, I can count in my department there were only 3 women. Myself having a degree, I had a senior 3 or 4 years earlier than me. She also came back from UK, and 1 diploma level lecturer, 3 women, and the rest were men. Okay? So moving forward in our system now, we have expanded 140 institutions altogether, more than 10,000. So the data speaks for itself. Currently, 60% of our lecturers are women, and many of them have pursued their education with their PhDs. We have 2% PhD holders, majority having first degree, 53.84%, masters 38%, and about 6% are diploma holders. So many are also pursuing professional certification. Yeah, that's in my polytechnic and community colleges. So it has tilted slightly, 60-40. I think it's due to TVET is no more 3D. TVET has become more attractive in our polytechnic and community college system. And in terms of policies, we have a policy of opportunities for all. And how do you climb up the ladder? In terms of promotion, it's based on merits. We have an excellence criteria model or scheme that we developed back in 2010. It is gender neutral. If you do well, you do well in terms of providing all the criteria. You meet that requirements. You go for your promotion exercise, you get it irrespective of your a man or a woman. So to me, with that scheme, it has managed to enhance many women to pursue their career. And I think what works well for our country is in terms of the public service, we have never been gender biased in any way. If I can just say about access and equity, our programs in polytechnics and community colleges, the students' data is slightly different. They are, if I can have, now more male, 56% in polytechnics and 44 in 56% of students in polytechnics are male, 44 are female. Maybe due to some programs in polytechnics, if I can just mention one particular program, marine engineering in Polytechnic Engku Omar, they do have 1 year on traveling in the ship. I think that one maybe deter the ladies from taking that program. So I'm just citing a very crude example. But in community college, 58% are male and 42% are female. Surprisingly, in community college, in terms of programs like culinary, there are many male students in that program. Otherwise, it would be dominated by women. I think because we provide access both ways. So it's very much opportunities for all. Does that answer your question, Madam Moderator?
Yes. Thank you. So that's the challenge and privilege to be a woman as well as the leader. Yeah. All right. Thank you again to TS Zainab. All right. We have completed all the presentation with the great informative sharing from all speakers. I shall now proceed to the Q&A session. Again, just a gentle reminder, you can type your question in the comment box. Well, okay. I have a questions here. It's from Shaktivel Lechumanan. This is specifically to Prof. Wick. In the midst of TVET transition in most institutions globally, what kind of strategies is needed to counter institution policies that emphasize more on mark instead of skill? More on marks instead of skills, meaning that more on knowledge instead of competency. Yes, Dr. Profi?
Yeah, I think so. If you go through these 4IR skills, right now, especially this TVET or skills in 4IR agenda, we normally don't concentrate more on hard skills, one skills. So what you have to do, you have to give them the flexibility, adaptability, and the innovation, creativity, etc., for them to actually adapt from one sector even to the other one. So therefore, the concentration now is not for, as an example, say marks, end of the year, end of the module, you know. So now, especially with this COVID, etc., so most of the even TVET sector now focus on more project-based. As an example, end of the module, so they conduct a project and submit a portfolio rather than sit in for an exam, etc. So if you go through that 4IR skills, so it's moving more on towards that one. Mainly, as we always discussed, the environment is very difficult to predict now, right? And also it's very difficult to now, the TVET. So we do teaching and all. Now we are in a big trouble how to give these hands-on skills. As an example, the practical part, right? So we have to adapt into that one. As an example, some institutions, it may be very difficult to adapt, especially government, etc. So we actually sign an agreement with one of the digital content developer, and we started already conducting programs, digital TVET, right? So because simulation, and there are so many materials where you can show it to the students sometimes, because with PowerPoint or the flat, the text, etc., you won't be able to visualize them what is happening. Now, unfortunately, we can't bring them to the the labs, etc. Because TVET, you have to have this balance, right? You can't 100% go on this, doing simulation and all, because end of the day, you have to implement that one. So that balance is, I think, important. In the future. Probably we'll move into these blended learning models, etc. Especially TVET should prepare for that one. Infrastructure, as I mentioned, not only the curriculum, because some we are talking about very high on these areas, but some institutions, even they don't get even laptops, they don't get even the internet facilities properly. Not only students, staff, even students. I know sometimes it's very difficult to conduct online classes because during rain time they don't have access. Right? Some areas, remote areas, they don't have access. So therefore, this balance is very, very important, right? Skill versus this, the soft skill part and hard skills part.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Vic. I hope the answer is sufficient for you, Dr. Sakti. Okay, the next question, we have another question here is to Dr. Margarita. Okay, the 2030 agenda could be accomplished by bringing together respective governments, business, media, institutions of higher education and local NGOs to improve the lives of the people in many countries. In terms of quality education, grading of educational policy and curriculum development in TVET in developing countries and countries in transition, as you mentioned earlier, could you perhaps describe what is green policies and curriculum are?
I'm muted. Yes, I'm muted. Yeah. So green policies relates to greening of industries and greening skills and establishing a coordinating body that can monitor what's going on and how to match the development plans with skills development. And when we're talking about greening, we shouldn't forget that it is not only about environmental impact, but it is also about social issues and also about economic issues. Because when economy is getting greener, it provides additional business, additional working places to the people. So we call it greening, even it is the broader framework of sustainable development, just to highlight that for industry, usually these practices are the most visible one when we're talking about sustainable development. As of course, they have these corporate responsibility plans that can focus on community, can focus on social issues, but environmental issues is the prominent area that they're talking about. And then when we're talking about greening curriculum, I think that we all should have this foundation of introducing generic modules or generic themes. And for that, as I mentioned during my presentation, we developed resources. And if we have 1 second, I can share the screen to show what do I mean. And we actually, now I can't. No, and now actually we combine delivering online teaching and training and addressing these sustainable development goals. You can see the one that highlighted, this is what we are doing. And then, for example, you click on this one and you can see what how it is described and what do we mean by green technology. And then, oh, I can't see it anymore. Can you still see it? No? Yeah. And then this is the examples from different industries. And yeah, you can see how it is structured. And why is it student-centered? Because the students can read these materials. And also the beauty of this approach is that you can print this and you don't need access to internet. So you can deliver this in the remote areas as well. And so, for example, this is a concept of green building with some examples that the students might read. And then we have the working sheet for the students when we're talking what sort of goals this activity will address, what green skills competencies will be developed, what students will be able to do as the end of this activity. Is it individual or a small group work? And then what resources are required, how long it will take, what type of assessment. And assessment has been mentioned today several times, so it is important to have an interesting pieces of assessment. Then what is required in terms of pre-class preparation, and during the class they need to separate in groups and then did these investigations, and they need to have discussions, and then at the end they will achieve some development in terms of skills. And also because we recognize that teachers, of course, are not very well trained to deliver this type of training, we provide some guidelines for them, again, just guiding, suggesting what they can do, what they should ask students to do before the class, during the class, and provide some answers for the questions that we suggested in the students' sheets with all these references. So in answering your question, I think that something like this should be included in all courses, because when we are talking about greening, this is the essential thing that we need to address when we are talking about sustainable development. Yeah, that was CPS training. And also you can click on the industry if you are teaching in the particular center, in a particular sector, then you can click on that and then you can see what resources is available. But when we are talking about pedagogy, what is important is to make sure that these case studies are contextualized. So they should be relevant to the industry that is around you or to the practices that is around you in your country. And so to provide these international examples and the local examples will help students to be engaged. Because when we looked at the Decade for Education for Sustainable Development, a lot of research have been done in terms of effective pedagogy. And that definitely shouldn't be focused on reading and just talking about things. Students should be engaged in work with community, in helping industries. For example, one of the activities students can go to the industry and do an audit. We have the checking list in terms of how environmental laws and regulations observed and what sort of practices are there. So I think that this is an important component that should be included in all programs. But then in terms of additional topping up skills that are related to new and innovative technologies, then we can look at what's happening in the industry, consult with the industry, and include it in our programs. And then the specialized training I mentioned already during my presentation, and you just follow your normal pathway. Just
yes, yes. Very comprehensive answer. Okay, there's one more question for Dr. Margarita. Oh, okay, we have changed the question now. This one is, I'm not sure from this, maybe anybody could answer the question. From my observation in Malaysia, most of the TVET lecturer or trainers has no industry exposure. Some of them are appointed as a lecturer after they complete their study, the fresh graduate. So how do they teach if they themselves are less competent? Perhaps this can be answered by T.S. Zainal.
Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Madam Jaya Shabuddin. This is a very valid question, and this is one issue that we will be addressing in terms of the quality. Remember, I had 5 focus group, and one of them is on quality. So quality for our TVET lecturers, and also to align with the single TVET accreditation body. Most of the TVET lecturers will have to ensure themselves going for the industry attachment and programs like that. If I'm not mistaken, it's like a duration of 1 month or so, or 30 days for the span of 2 years. So that will be imposed, but I heard many are wanting to defer from that happening. So because of some funding constraint. But if this becomes an initiative, the government will be providing the fund to help our lecturers get themselves, more competent to bridge the gap between what they teach in their institutions and what is being practiced in the TVET. So what they do, I think what they will get is some kind of CPD, and will also be added on as their criteria of excellence. So that will be a push factor for them to get on to this program. And for polytechnic and community colleges, we have a certain allocation for our lecturers to embark on this. However, due to we are very limited in terms of government now is not expanding in the public service, so we must really cap how many of our lecturers go out to do this training, because that means we'll be short of lecturers for the certain programs, and that will affect how we conduct our programs which are accredited. So the balance between how many lecturers go out to do their industrial training and how many lecturers stay in to ensure that quality education is being conducted in institutions, that is what is the challenge that we have to embark. But I agree, our lecturers should be more industry competent and should level themselves up. I agree on that. Thank you, Puan Jaya.
Can I add one point? I think that another interesting way is to organize startups and to include the lecturers there and include some industry there. But of course, industry should be interested in the issue, so it should be some collaboration, discussion at the beginning to find out what sort of issues they would like to address, and then to involve the colleagues from the polytechnic, and then through the activity they can learn. So it should probably not be the structured way of learning, but learning on the need to know base, and that proved to be effective at different levels of education. Yes, when we have a problem and we don't know how to deal with that, in collaboration we can look up for the solution and came up with some professional development. And another point that also to consider that your staff will go to the industry and somebody from the industry will come and teach at your polytechnic at the same time. And we observed that in the region there are very good examples of that, how it works.
Well, thank you, TS Zainab, and thank you, Dr. Margarita, for the additional input. Well, since the time is very limited, that will be our final question. Apologize for any inconvenience. Okay, then thank you to all speakers for the wonderful and inspiring speech. I sincerely wish that everyone benefited from this session, and I also believe the audience and myself agree that this has been a very informative and fruitful sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, we had almost reached to the end of the session. To have a great ending for this webinar series, with all due respect and honor, I humbly invite Yang Berbahagia Professor Datuk Teknologis Dr. Wahid Razali, Vice Chancellor of UTHM and Chairman of Malaysia Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training, MyRevet, to deliver his closing remarks. Please welcome Datuk.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good day everybody. Yang berhormat Datuk Seri Dr. Noraini bin Ahmad, the Minister of Higher Education Malaysia, who is ever concerned about TVET for the country. Yang bahagia Dr. Professor Dr. Nasruddin bin Muhammad, the Director of Higher Education Leadership, that's AKEPT, and also Associate Professor Technologist Dr. Razali bin Hassan, the Director of MyRevet, and not to forget also present here is Dr. Muhammad Naim bin Yaakob, who is Deputy Director of MyRevet, and also everybody knows that he was the previous Director General of CPSC. I witnessed and watched with lot of interest with what was spoken by all the speakers, and thank you very much to Professor Margarita for sharing your nice TVET framework for organizational operation, and also Professor Wick, the current DG of CPSC, who shared about how to plan and as well as manage changes within TVET organization, and of course Technologies Zainab, who mentioned about the Malaysian initiative towards what we call a change into the future, where she spoke about polytechnics and also respective movement within Malaysia to be relevant into the future. So thank you everybody, and most of all I would like to thank all the participants in this, and I was made to understand that we have quite a very big number of participation for this series. So thank you AKEPT, and thank you MyRevet, and I hope that this will continue on to making TVET a more or a bigger agenda for the future of our young students and learners. Just a very brief touch on what is our thought on TVET. So the direction of TVET is nonetheless being spoken well into what is the framework within the big framework of SDG. So that was mentioned well by Margarita and also Professor Wick, while the implementation plan was mentioned well, putting an example, Malaysia as an example by T.S. Zainab. However, the question that I would like to put, what type of TVET leadership that would be able to bring the changes into the country? So this is the question. Are we concerned about the quality, or are we concerned about quantity? As far as my take is concerned, I feel that a leader must be visionary. Means that while others have got very short, 100 kilometers of perspective, but being TVET leadership should have double than that perhaps. Why?
particularly because technology changes very fast. Before we can do anything, that the next technology is coming up. And therefore, what is the leader's role in this aspect? And therefore, he has got, or she has got, for Tia Zainab mentioned a lot about women's leadership. And I understand that in Malaysia, it is growing phenomena that not only that the leaders come from the women, but also the participants, the trainees. So I would like to suggest that AKEPT and Malaysia to come up with a second series or third series on TVET, women's leadership. And we must collaborate. Men and women should collaborate, not only women. If you go on your way, then perhaps there will be another session, series 4, men's TVET leadership. So we wouldn't like to have that sort of, competition, while TVET is in need of a very strong and robust leadership. So apart from that, I think TVET leadership need also to be practical. So one has got to go to the ground to do that. For example, when UTHM review its directions, we believe that the role of lecturers should be changed or should be changing. There should be 2 days in the industries and 3 days in the campus. So what does it take that a lecturer or a leader in TVET must also be involved in research, be involved in the deliveries, that is teaching and learning, or in our term, because I personally wouldn't like to call education, but I would like to call it edu-train, because edu-train is more effective, while education is about educating is about values and also mind. But you can never, train your hands and how to kick the ball to the goal without having to practice. So perhaps for TVET, edu-train is more purposive and is more what we call practical for our purpose. While I know that ILO is having the training and UNESCO is having the education, so we cannot simply follow what these directions are. We must be able to make sure that what benefit our students, our learners, this is what we are doing. That's why that edu-train is more appropriate. So the leaders must understand not only the world of education, but also the world of training. And with that, I think only then that we can, what we call as what a former African American minister Malcolm X said, that education, and in this case my understanding is edu-train, is the passport for the future. And for tomorrow belongs those who prepare for the future. So my dear friends, respected panelists, I do hope that you come back for the second or third session with the purpose of having a more practical leadership training. And I guess that AKEPT is ever willing to lead into that direction together with Mariwet. So thank you everybody for supporting AKEPT and Mariwet for that purpose. And I do hope that you had gained lots of perspective and understanding from this small seminar, and I do hope that this will continue on. And what is more important is the leaders of tomorrow will need to have a quality edu-train, not education and not training. Can I repeat? Edu-train. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Well, thank you very much, Dato, for the thoughtful speech. Well, so we shall end this program. Well, dear participants, we would like to thank you for your time and support in attending the webinar. Please do fill the feedback form via the QR code that will be displayed or via the Google Form link in AKEPT Facebook page and in Prestige YouTube channel's chat box to get the e-certificate. Your feedback is most welcome. It will allow us to better meet your expectation in your future. Thank you very much for your participation in this session, and thank you again to our respectful speakers. Thank you, Dr. Margarita. Thank you, Prof. Vic, and thank you, TS Zainab. I hope everybody enjoyed and benefited from this session. And on behalf of the organizer, I would like to apologize for any drawback. We appreciate for your participation. And thank you very much and have a good day ahead. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.